Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Demon Slayer. Sign in from Mount Sagiri. Chapter 76. After simple preparations, Beidou and Yusui Tengen hurriedly left the headquarters. The place they are going to go first is not Tokyo Prefecture. It is the hometown of Iguro Obanai, Hachiho Island in the southeastern sea. Affected by the Kuroshio current, the climate is mild and humid. It has the reputation of the island of everlasting spring and is a well-known tourist destination in later generations. But right now, Beidou and Yusui Tengen have no intention of playing. The most urgent task is to find the missing column. Yihei, he lives too far away. If it's by boat, it will take at least a day or two. On the pier, Yusui Tengen held the map in his hand and couldn't help frowning. He was right. There was a distance of 300 kilometers between Hachiho Island and the coastline, and the geographical location was very remote. Undeveloped places like this are often inaccessible. What's more, no one can guarantee that Iguro Obanai will be on the island, and it may be empty in 16 games. Thinking of this, Yusui Tengen became even more impatient. In stark contrast to him, Beidou walked in silence, ignoring his complaints. Beidou, you should say something. Yinju was bored, and simply put away the map. Soon, the two found a boatman and wanted to find out how much it would cost to go to Hachiho Island. Who would have thought that when Hachiho Island was mentioned, the boatman's face suddenly changed. No, you can find someone else. It's not a good place to go, I'm going to Hachiho Island. Seeing this scene, Yusui Tengen was stunned suddenly, but a hint of suspicion flashed in Beidou's eyes. Obviously, the boatman was hiding something. Boatman, what do you mean by that? Or is it that your boat can't go to Hachiho Island? Yusui Tengen frowned, curled his lips. If that's the case, then it's not about finding someone else. Hearing these words, the boatman's eyes were startled, and he immediately became angry for no reason. Immediately, he slapped the board of the boat suddenly, his eyes widened. What nonsense, are you kidding? I have been sailing here for more than 10 years, where have I not been? Hachiho Island is nothing. Beidou smiled faintly, and looked him up and down. Didn't you just say you couldn't go? I am. The boatman froze for a moment, and then realized that he had been tricked by two people, and he couldn't speak for a while. Seeing his burgundy face, the corners of Yusui Tengen's mouth rose slightly. In desperation, the boatman had no choice but to sigh, and patted the plank of the boat. Forget it, you guys come up. The most important thing for sailing in this kind of place is reputation. If the boat owner agrees and backs down, spread the word to the outside world. I am afraid that few people will buy his account. Sit tight. The boatman untied the rope tied to the pier, picked up the oar with ease, pushed hard, and the boat slid a few meters away. Having nothing to do, Yusui Tengen put down the map, and asked sideways, Boatman, why don't you go to Hachiho Island? Could it be that the government issued a ban? Hearing his words, the boatman's rowing slowed down. On that wrinkled face, there was a trace of fear. At first glance, you are an outsider. Who in our area doesn't know that the place is haunted by ghosts? Haunted, let me tell you, this is me, replaced by someone else. Before the words fell, the hull of the boat shook inexplicably, causing the boatman to stagger. As if thinking of something, he hastily threw away the oar, kowtowed and bowed. Hai Niangyang, calm down, calm down. Seeing his weird performance, Yusui Tengen and Beidou looked at each other, feeling even more puzzled in their hearts. The boatman kowtowed for a long time before picking up the oars again. What is amazing is that the wave that hit the hull just now gradually receded. Boatman, you haven't said anything about being haunted yet. I can't say any more. Besides, Hai Niangyang is going to get angry again. The boatman muttered, turning his back on his back. When you get to Hachiho Island, you two get off the boat quickly, I don't want to get into trouble. Hearing this, Yusui Tengen couldn't bear it anymore. He snatched the oar, and an invisible pressure came suddenly, making the boatman tremble. You, what are you doing? The boatman thought that Yinzu was about to commit murder, but unexpectedly, he froze for a second. Hearing a crash, Yusui Tengen held the oars with both hands and rowed vigorously. Your movement is too slow, at your speed. It's going to be dark in the sky. The boatman wanted to refute him, but it turned out that the speed was indeed much faster. The whole ship is at sea, as if it has wings. Seeing this scene, Beidou smiled, and turned to look at the boatman. Now, can we have a good talk? In an instant, a white light flashed past the eyeballs. The boatman took a closer look, and his heart suddenly turned cold. It turned out to be a knife. Oh, you two boys. It's asking for trouble. At the same time, the system's prompt sounded in his mind. Ding, a new check-in task is released. Please ask the host to arrive at Hachiho Island within 2 days. After completing the corresponding tasks, you will receive system rewards. A cold light flashed in Beidou's eyes, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. Sure enough, as the distance got closer, did the mission trigger. At the same time, the boatman reluctantly told the truth. A long time ago, Hachiho Island was designated as a place of exile by the government, where there are many prisoners, as well as exiled pirates. Here we are, Hachiho Island is in front of us. Looking around, an island gradually emerged on the blue sea. A few gulls are circling in the air, and swimming fish jump up from time to time. Everything looks so peaceful and peaceful. What is incompatible with it is the trembling expression of the boatman. I'm going back, you two boys. Seek good luck. After that, he pushed towards the old pier and drew a few meters. Looking at the back of the boatman leaving, Yusui Tengen frowned, and grabbed his chin with his right hand. Hi, I say Beidou. Don't you think that man is strange? Beidou walked in front of him, with his right hand on the scabbard, ignoring it at all. However, Yusui Tengen is still chattering. If it's just pirates and prisoners, there's no need for the government to seal off the island, right? Or, what else is there on this island? Is that enough? Beidou turned his head and glanced at him. If you have the energy, why not consider your friend's situation? Hearing this, Yuba Tengen choked to death. His face turned red, and he couldn't help but quicken his pace. Yinju has already thought about it. As long as he finds Iguro Obanai, he will immediately find a way to return to the ghost-killing squad. I don't want to stay with this monster for one more second. What Yusui Tengen didn't notice was that when the boat docked, a pair of eyes from the corner stared at them. Soon, the two stepped into the hot and humid woods. Due to the humid climate here, the annual average temperature is around 18 degrees, which inevitably breeds many mosquitoes. If ordinary people passed by here, it would be enough for those bugs to have a full meal. Shusha. When walking to the middle of the woods, Yusui Tengen fixed his eyes and couldn't help pricking up his ears. There is a voice. Beidou didn't respond to him, but narrowed his eyes slightly. Sure enough, with a rustling sound, 3 or 5 figures suddenly jumped out of the grass. After careful observation, these people are short in stature, poorly dressed, and completely familiar with the attire of refugees. In the eyes they looked at Beidou and Yusui Tengen. Full of jealousy and banter. 2 fat sheep who are not afraid of death. Today is really lucky. How long has it been? Someone finally came to Hachiho Island. Look at their clothes, they are really enviable. A few refugees grinned grinningly, holding weapons like sticks in their hands. Seeing this picture, Yusui Tengen couldn't help laughing out loud. His smile really ruined the atmosphere a bit. I said, do you also want to rob like this? I'll spare your life this time, get the hell out. While speaking, Yusui waved to Tengen with a condescending attitude. Feeling his deep contempt, the refugees were immediately unhappy, and their eyes glowed red. Especially Yusui Tengen is still so tall, this comparison. They were like chicks instead. Court death, things that don't know how to live or die. With a lot of curses, the refugees have already swarmed up, aiming at Yusui Tengen. It seems that they used crowd tactics to win the first post. Uzui Tengen curled his lips and snapped his wrists, just about to teach these overreaching people a lesson. Unexpectedly, in the next second, a blade of light cut through the darkness. Tear, with the sound of a silk breaking, in the field of vision, several refugees who were running froze at the same time. That picture seems to be frozen in this case. Soon, one after another fell to their knees, and deep scars appeared on the abdomen. With a puff, blood splashed all over his clothes. They didn't know until their death who they had offended. Clang. The blade is sheathed, not stained with a little blood. Looking at the corpse under his feet, Beidou didn't move at all, as if he just crushed a group of ants to death. And Yusui Tengen, who was on the side, just came back to his senses. Beidou, what are you doing? Why kill them? Yinju frowned tightly. not understanding why Beto killed him so painfully, and his mood was a little agitated. Hearing his roar, Beto shook his head. Quote. Didn't you smell? Did they smell blood? What? Yu Sui Tengen was stunned, and couldn't help lowering his head, only then did he notice something. On the bodies of these refugees, there were not only filth, but also bloodstains that could not be washed clean. Thinking back to what they just said, it is not yet known how many lives were on hand. But Yu Sui Tengen gritted his teeth, he really couldn't accept Beto's practice of killing people when he disagreed with each other. After all, in his perception, the siege squad has always been about killing ghosts and saving people. Rarely confronts ordinary people. Finally, after a period of silence, Yu Sui Tengen made a decision. Beto, I think the two of us are still. Let's split up and act. After saying this sentence, Yinzu sighed again, and took out something from his pocket. If you are in danger, ring this. But I don't think you can use this thing. What he handed to Beto was a flare. It is good. Beto's answer was also very simple. After receiving the signal flare, he jumped into the vast jungle again. Seeing Beto leave silently, Yu Sui Tengen leaned over to look at the corpses. Also went to the other end. Little did they know that after they disappeared, a figure emerged from the shadows, staring at those corpses with greedy eyes. He licked his chapped lips instead. Little Barney, are they your friends? It seems that there is a quarrel. A few minutes later, Beto walked out of the jungle. Along the way, he only released a little bit of demonic power, and those annoying mosquitoes retreated and made way for a path. Standing at the edge of the jungle, Beto sees. It's a dilapidated picture. Several collapsed houses, a stone road in disrepair, and half-burned rattan armor on the ground. It was enough to see that no one had been here for a long time. Beto walked silently on the stone road, his eyes were calm, observing the movements around him. When he came to a certain room, he stopped suddenly. Then he stretched out his right hand, and his fingertips touched the wall of the room, and there was a feeling of unevenness. And the source of this feeling is a tiny scratch. To be more precise, it was the traces cut with a sword, which created a sense of disunity. Beto can tell just by eye observation. This sword mark didn't last long. And it is very likely to come from Yihei Xiaoba. You, who are you? At this moment, a female voice came from behind Beto. He turned around and looked, and found that it was a girl in a coir raincoat and a bamboo hat, with her hands clasped over her heart. His eyes flickered with panic. Beto smiled lightly and said, "Hello, where is the Yihei family?" Yihei. The moment she heard these two words, the girl shivered. As if thinking of something terrifying, she involuntarily took a step back. At the same time, the tone became panicked. What are you looking for them for? I have a friend there. The girl frowned, hesitated for a long time, and then nodded, come with me. Hearing this sentence, Beto narrowed his eyes slightly, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Holding the Nichiren blades, he followed the girl's footsteps. Under the guidance of the girl, the two went deeper into Hachiho Island, and the scenery on both sides changed again and again. From hot and humid jungles to plains, from abandoned houses to barren mountains. It was also getting darker. The girl staggered like this, turning her head from time to time to see if Beto was still behind her. Is that friend of yours also from the Yihei family? That's right. Then do you know, that family has disappeared many years ago? Beto frowned and nodded. For his calm performance, the girl seemed a little surprised, with a look of disappointment on her brows. At the same time, talking to himself. Many years ago, the Yihei family was still the owner of this island. Their patriarch is a woman. No, it should be said that the whole family is a woman. Those women are powerful and attractive, and the men of the island do their bidding. They use the money offered by men to build houses, live a life of luxury and good food, and live a happy life. Until one day, the girl took a deep breath, and her face gradually turned pale. She forcibly suppressed the trembling of her body and finished speaking. People were surprised to find that all the members of the Yihei family were dead and lying in a pool of blood. It is said that only one person escaped. That's the only man in the Yihei family, BGEI, and he's also a traitor. If he hadn't betrayed the family, how could everyone have died? The surname Yihei will not be forgotten. Having said that, the girl slowly turned around. The mottled moonlight shone on her face, but she looked extremely pale, and her eyes were staring at Beidou. She is longing for an answer. Soon, Beidou's faint voice came to his ears. This story is different from what I heard. Oh. The girl was stunned, and before she could react, Beidou had already explained the reason. The Yihei family is indeed all women. Because, it was a family that only gave birth to girls and treated girls as tools, and no boys have been born for hundreds of years. They are selfish, greedy, lazy, have no sense of shame. The reason why they can live a rich life is that they sold themselves to men and their souls to ghosts. Most importantly, the man who escaped was not a traitor. Suddenly, the atmosphere suddenly became extremely depressing. Looking at the girl again, she couldn't control the trembling of her body. Finally, Beidou said the ending. He's coming for revenge. There was only a crash, the leaves rustled, and an inexplicable gust of wind suddenly descended. Suddenly, an extremely cold breath locked Beidou. Enough, shut up, he is a traitor and will always be a disgrace to the family. The voice changed from immature to vicissitudes, and the girl's skin also appeared wrinkled, turning from pale to livid. Under the coir raincoat, her legs merged together. It turned into a terrifying tail. Seeing the girl's strange changes, Beidou smiled lightly. Is this your real face? I still like you as a human being. At this moment, standing in front of Beidou is an ogre. As for the girl on the list, it was just her disguise. The most important thing is that Beidou has already seen her weakness, that coir raincoat. A means used by girls to block the sun. Hiss. A pair of strange white snake eyes stared at Beidou. In an instant, she had already swam over with her huge tail. Looking at the fast-approaching ghost, Beidou smiled with interest. With his powerful perception, he could easily tell that the girl had just become an ogre not long ago. And looking at her clumsy appearance, it seems that she hasn't gotten used to her current body yet. Dealing with such a ghost will hardly take much effort. Just makes Beidou feel good. Odd that. Who turned her into a ghost? Beidou smiled, raised his right hand, and made a random knife. In an instant, fierce lightning surged out, flying towards the girl with an unpredictable trajectory and speed. The powerful oppressive force suddenly dropped, causing the girl to tremble unconsciously. She subconsciously wanted to dodge, but compared to lightning, her movements were slower than a snail. With a sizzle, Zheng Guang had already touched her tail. Ah! With a burst of painful screams, there was a burning smell in the air, and looking at the green snake tail, it was already bloody. Can't do it again. Feeling the almost tearing pain, the girl's forehead was covered with beads of sweat. She propped her upper body with her hands, raised her head in horror, and only a pair of playful eyes. Where is he? Hearing this voice, the girl's eyes froze, as if she was in an ice cellar, and her limbs gradually became stiff. Finally, with a trembling, her tail turned into legs again, and the scales on her face gradually faded, turning back into a human appearance. However, the wound torn by the electric light still hasn't healed. You, who are you? The girl frowned tightly, looking weak, not daring to meet Beidou's eyes. As if in her heart, Beidou was far more terrifying than that adult. I said it before, I'm here looking for a friend. Just as Beidou revealed the girl's true face, there was a lot of commotion on the other side of Hachiho Island. In the jungle, a tall figure is shuttling. Holding two swords in his hand, he cut off all obstacles that blocked his progress, and his speed became faster and faster. That anxious look was none other than Yinzu Yusui Tengen. Yihei, where did it hide? While talking, Yinzu slashed a few more times, clearing out a shortcut. Finally, roads and houses appeared in his vision. Traces of human life. Yusui Tengen frowned, slowed down, and stared ahead vigilantly. Before joining the ghost-killing squad, he was a descendant of the ninja family. He received special ninja training since he was a child, and his observation skills were quite keen. So with just one glance, Yusui Tengen found out the tricks. The old earthen stove in the yard was still emitting faint smoke, and someone lit a fire for cooking. Obviously, someone left here not long ago, or is it still found? This guy seems to be a bit tricky. Don't worry, he is only one person, how could he beat us? Following a burst of joking discussions, one figure after another came out of the darkness, encircling Yusui Tengen. Looking at their attire, they are no different from the previous refugees. The only difference is that these guys are more robust and have ruddy complexions. Seeing this group of guys, Yusui Tengen instinctively felt disgusted. Especially when he thought of the corpses in the jungle, he felt nauseated. Why don't you speak? Could it be a mute? Stop talking nonsense with him. Those 2 knives are good, they are mine now. Don't forget my clothes. Before the war started, this group of people was already discussing to carve up the relics of the sound column. Hearing this, Yusui Tengen couldn't hold back any longer, kicked suddenly, and swept 4 or 5 meters away. In a flash, he rushed out of the encirclement. This kid wants to run. It's pretty fast, but, can you run? Several refugees looked at each other and smiled, and even clapped their hands vigorously, as if to send some signal. Sure enough, on the only way for Yusui Tengen, another 7 or 8 threatening tigers emerged. The sound column looked around, only to realize that he was surrounded by a circle, and was stared at by pairs of eyes full of green light. He was already eager to save people, but in this way, he had to kill a lot of time. Especially what the refugees said next, made Yusui Tengen no longer hesitate. Which one is tastier, his thigh or his arm? Does it still work? It must be the thigh. What are you talking about? After the person dies, he can have a full meal again. The refugees discussed jokingly, not taking Yusui Tengen seriously at all. It seems that in their hearts, Yinju is just a piece of fatter fat, no different from pigs and sheep. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Hearing these appalling words, Yusui Tengen's pupils shrank. At this moment, he finally understood why Beidou had killed him. Don't you smell? Do they smell blood? These refugees, under the environment of long-term hunger, can no longer be called human beings. Now they are different from the cannibal Gaiwu. Thinking of this, Yusui Tengen lowered his proud head. There was also a look of remorse in his eyes. So I was wrong. There is no doubt that Beidou is right. Keep these people alive and more innocent people will just die. Yusui Tengen gave a wry smile, and suddenly didn't know how to face Beidou. In the next second, the group of refugees had rushed over, as if they had bumped into a fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered. However, what greets them will be a feast of death. Then, let you beasts be the object of my venting. When you followed Tengen wielding a pair of knives and started killing, something crept out of the corner of the house. It was a small snow-white snake, blinking its pupils. He was spitting snake letters at him. Impressively as Iguro Obanai's partner, Dysprosium Pill. Who? After a while, Yusui Tengen finally put down the butcher knife. It's just that under his feet, there are already corpses strewn all over the field, and the soil is soaked in dirty blood. Even if the sound column told himself that they were man-eating beasts. But in his heart, Yusui Tengen still couldn't pass this hurdle, and felt it was not a good taste. Perhaps after completing this task, he really needs to rest for a while. Beidou, if it's you. And how? What Yusui Tengen didn't realize was that, invisibly, he was trying to guess. Even imitated Beidou's approach. Just as he fell into deep thought, a faint voice came from his ear, implying that something was moving in the grass. Who? Yusui Tengen clenched his swords tightly, and frowned at 963. Unexpectedly, in the next second, a small figure came out and quickly crawled in front of him. Hiss! It turned out to be a small snake the size of a palm. Seeing this familiar figure, Yusui Tengen was stunned for a moment, and then he was overjoyed. Dysprosium pills. That's right, this snake is Iguro Obanai's close partner. One person and one snake have never been separated. But this time, Daimaru appeared alone. Suddenly, Yusui Tengen's eyebrows became worried, thinking that something happened to Snake Zoo. Where is Yihei? Where is he? Hearing his question, Kasamaru nodded, then turned and left. Seeing this scene, Yinzu hurriedly followed and gradually walked out of the sea of blood. Not long after you left with Tengen, a woman in core raincoat set foot on this land, and she could vaguely see her pretty figure. Looking at the direction in which the sound column left, the woman's smile was a bit charming. Go, you and your friends will be reunited in no time. While speaking, the woman bent down and picked up something from the ground with her jade hands. Then she put it in front of her, took a deep breath, and a little disgust appeared on her snow-white face. It was the arm of a vagrant. Obviously a human being. I have to do ghost things. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Having said that, when the woman tasted that arm, she didn't mean to be negligent. On the other side of Hachiho Island, under the guidance of the girl, Beidou is also getting better. Contrary to the dark jungle over there, the further you go, the fresher the air, and the sound of trickling streams can be heard from time to time. This place is as addictive as Xanadu Genichi. Soon, a house appeared in front of it, and you could tell it was a rich family by looking at its luxurious style. That's right, that's where it is. What is strange is that after seeing such a beautiful scenery, the girl suddenly trembled and her steps stopped. As if thinking of something terrible. Beidou smiled lightly and said, "Go ahead." Hearing these words, the girl subconsciously shook her head, but when she thought of Beidou's unpredictable methods, she didn't dare to refuse. Yes, but inside. What's wrong? After a battle between heaven and man, the girl moved her steps, but her movements became more cautious. For fear of disturbing the presence in the house. Beidou looked around and confirmed that this was the residence of the Yihei family, and it was even more extravagant than imagined. Just the decoration of these carved railings and jade brickwork is not comparable to ordinary small nobles. What is suspicious is that the Yihei family has been destroyed for many years, but there is no sign of the warehouse being looted. Is someone maintaining it all the time? Looking at the trembling girl in front of him, Beidou's eyes flashed a stern look. Where's Yihei? It's down there in the cell. Let's go. The girl nodded, obviously worried. She opened a door, walked down the stairs timidly, and came to a place that looked like a prison cell. The degree of humidity and heat here is no less than that of the jungle. Especially since there are no windows here, the whole cell is full of oily smell. Unbelievable, how did Iguro Obanai spend 12 years here? In the deadly silent cell, sitting cross-legged was a young man in a black and white striped haori, with disheveled hair and a somewhat downcast look. Hearing slight footsteps, the young man spoke coldly. "Did she ask you to come?" Keishui. Seeing that no one responded, the young man laughed at himself and drooped his head. "I didn't expect that after all these years, I would still be unable to escape. As a descendant of the scumbag family, am I really a scumbag?" The young man spoke intermittently, his eyes flickering with helplessness and a deep sense of self-blame. He was thinking, if he hadn't escaped from the prison, maybe more than 50 clansmen will not die unexpectedly. Yes, as a sacrifice, wouldn't it be good if I was eaten? Why bother to escape? Just when the young man felt lost, a cold voice broke his self-blaming question. "Are you giving a eulogy?" "Ihei, what?" Iguro Obanai in the cell froze for a moment, then turned around suddenly. What caught his eyes was not the figure he had imagined, but a handsome face with a smile. At this moment, Beidou saw the true face of Snake Zoo clearly. Not only the green pupils in the left and the gold in the right, but what is even more frightening is the wound on the corner of his mouth, which looks like a snake's head. You are Beidou." Iguro Obanai's throat moved, showing disbelief. "How did you find this?" Soon, Shizu understood the reason, because he saw a trembling girl beside him, Keishui. "So that's how it was. It was my cousin who brought you here." Yihei smiled wryly, and in the next second, he suddenly grabbed the fence with both hands, and Beidou issued a warning. "Run, run, it's a trap, she's coming soon." Before the words fell, there was a huge blasting sound above everyone's heads. Together with the entire underground cell, they were shaking violently. No doubt there was fighting outside. Hearing this familiar voice, Iguro Obanai was suddenly stunned, and his expression became more and more anxious. "This guy Tengen, he's here anyway. You too, alas." As Beidou expected, above the ground, Wu follows Tengen and a fight breaks out with the ogre. In the empty courtyard of the Yihei family, a tall figure was moving rapidly, and the rustling sound could be heard endlessly. It's hard to imagine what kind of enemy it is. Yu Sui Tengen, who is a pillar, can be restrained and forced to dodge. You know, every pillar of the ghost-killing team can easily kill an existence like Sha Shandong. This also means that the enemies who are entangled with the sound column, most likely above the bottom string. Hiss. Standing on the wall, Yu Sui Tengen finally had a chance to breathe. He stared at the swaying snake tail below, and couldn't help but have the urge to vomit. Standing in front of Yinju is a half-human, half-snake monster, long black hair like a waterfall, lotus root arms as white as jade, and a waist that is grippingly Based on these points alone, she may be called a beauty. However, her ferocious head that was uttering a snake letter, and the huge snake tail below the waist, were enough to show that she was not human. Hiss. Looking up at the sound column that was resting, the snake ghost suddenly let out a leeren laugh. Cut. What a strong human being, such a tempting delicacy, it has been a long time since I met. Her golden vertical pupils stared at Yusui Tengen, licking the saliva from the corner of her mouth with a snake letter from time to time. Gradually, the snake ghost twisted its huge snake tail and approached. Hearing this sentence, Yinju couldn't hold back his curiosity any longer and questioned him. You ugly idiot, where did you hide Yihei? Believe it or not, I'll blow you to pieces. Before the words fell, Yusui Tengen had already taken out 2 metal balls, which were the bombs he had prepared personally. It's a pity that the snake ghost smiled instead of anger at the threat of Yinju's innocence. His eyes were also full of sarcasm and banter. Kiichi, you're talking about that little guy. It has already been eaten by me. While talking, the snake ghost smiled and patted his belly, and he showed an unfinished look, speaking of which, he knelt down and begged for mercy before he died. Kianchi, that humble attitude really opened my eyes. Before the snake ghost could finish speaking, a blast of explosives came suddenly. There was a loud bang, and a deep pit with black smoke appeared in the courtyard under her snake's tail. Looking at Yusui Tengen's entire face, it was already extremely red. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Impossible. Ihei won't beg for mercy from you. In an instant, the sound column holding 2 machetes jumped down from the wall and rushed straight at the snake ghost, who had been waiting for a long time. Seeing him approaching, the snake ghost not only did not dodge. Instead, he grinned strangely. Come on, my dear little mouse, I can't wait to taste you. The next second, at the moment when the two came into contact, Sui Qingyuan let out a roar. Kill. The breath of sound, the shape of the 4 sound cut endlessly. This blow contained his anger, hatred and pain. In the entire Demon Slayer squad, apart from Ubuyashiki Kagaya, who trusts him the most, Yinju's best friend is Snake Zu. Now hearing the news of Iguro Obanai's death, how can he not be pained? At this time, Yinju was already dazzled by anger, and he didn't notice at all. I have fallen into a trap. Soon, the 2 knives slashed at the snake ghost's shoulders, detonating the explosives instantly. Yinju didn't have time to dodge, so he could only let the powerful impact force blow him away several meters away. Bang, bang. It was not until it hit the wall that it barely stopped the momentum of the flight. Gunpowder smoke filled the entire courtyard. Yusui Tengen got up tremblingly, and sighed, Yihei, are you really dead? I don't believe it. Hiss. At this moment, something pierced through the smoke, approaching Fengba Tengen. In this state, he has no room for maneuver, and can only watch himself being hit. This is. A pungent smell came to his nostrils, and the sound column quickly judged that what covered his body was a kind of corrosive poison. Followed by a familiar figure. Little mouse, I'm not interested in playing with you anymore. As food, one should have the consciousness of being eaten. Yusui Tengen stared blankly, only to realize that the damage caused by the explosion was very limited for the snake ghost. Until this moment, he finally realized what life and death threats are. Yinju frowned tightly, with a sad smile on the corner of his mouth. If I knew it earlier, I would have listened to Beidou. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in this situation. That's right, Yusui Tengen regretted it. He regretted why he acted separately and acted so impulsively. Unfortunately, under the double oppression of Venom and Snake Ghost, it's too late to say anything. Crack. Just when Yusui Tengen's consciousness was blurred and his breathing was weak, a broken sound came from his ear. At the same time, something rolled to his hand. Yusui Tengen squinted his eyes, his pupils shrank slightly, and couldn't help blurting out, head. Hiss. That's right, the one grinning on his right hand side turned out to be the head of a snake ghost. At the same time, in the smoke of gunpowder, 2 familiar figures also came. Mr. Yusui, please stay safe. Tengen, are you okay? The young man holding the Nichiren blades is exactly the calm Beidou. It was he who cut off the snake ghost's head. And the other person is the disgraced Iguro Obanai, but fortunately he is fine. Yihei, you really are not dead. Yusui Tengen was stunned, trying to stand up, but was stopped. In the end, the moment he saw Beidou, Yinju understood that he saved Snake Zhu and himself. After a battle between heaven and man, Yusui Tengen showed a bitter smile. Beidou, did I lose again? This time, thank you very much. Beidou smiled, but his eyes turned to the bedroom in the courtyard. Speaking of, this time is indeed thanks to Mr. Beidou. Unlike Yusui Tengen's carefree, Iguro Obanai is more of an emotion of guilt. He never expected that in the crisis of life and death, the person who came to rescue him, it will be Beidou. In Iguro Obanai's view, even if the two are not enemies, they are also friends. However, it turns out that Beidou, who seems to be close to strangers and young, is more mature than the two of them combined. Most importantly, have a visionary heart. In the dark, Iguro Obanai looked at Beidou's figure, inexplicably lost his mind. If Ubuyashiki Kagaya is the master in everyone's mind, then Beidou is more like a veritable leader, especially the temperament he exudes in his gestures. It is even more involuntary to surrender. It was only at this moment that Yihei Xiaofen understood why she was so resistant to Beidou in the past. Not only because of his excellence, but most importantly, in front of Beidou, everyone has a kind of unwillingness to be suppressed. Thinking of this, Snake Zhu sighed, looked at Beidou with an extremely solemn attitude, and then bowed deeply. Thank you, Mr. Beidou. Please take care of me in the future. Seeing this scene, Yusui Tengen was stunned, and scratched his head with a smile. Yihei, this is not your style. Facing the gag between the two, Beidou nodded slightly. In his clear eyes, a trace of tenderness flashed undetectably. Now that I have found Mr. Yihei, it is time for us to return. Yes, let's go now. Upon hearing this, Yusui Tengen really became excited, completely forgetting that there were wounds left by the venom on his body. The next second, he grinned again in pain. Hiss, I don't want to stay in this place any longer. Ha ha ha. Supporting each other, Snake Zhu and Yin Zhu walked towards the courtyard silently, but after walking for a while, they realized that Beidou was still in place. Just as Yusui Tengen was about to ask, Beidou shook his head. You guys go first, I still have something to deal with. Hearing these words, Iguro Obanai also nodded without asking any more questions. Then I will trouble you, Mr. Beidou. No problem. Only Yusui Tengen was confused, his eyes wide open. Looking at the back of the two people leaving, Beidou let out a long sigh of relief, his eyes gradually turned serious. At the same time, a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. Aren't you going to come out yet? Before the words fell, suddenly, a group of poisonous mist gushed out. The direction of attack is Beidou's back. Hiss. Followed by that, there is also the scalp-numbing sound of snakes. Smelling the sour smell in the air, Beidou narrowed his eyes slightly and moved the blade at the same time. He waved lightly, and a strong wind whizzed away. Just hearing a crash, the thick poisonous mist disintegrated and dispersed in an instant. And the sneak attacker also showed his original shape. Hiss. The slender waist, the gorgeous clothes, and the snake tail full of disobedience, it is the beautiful snake just now. What is puzzling is that her neck has been cut off. Why is it still here? After careful observation, her dress is different from that snake ghost, and her figure is also more immature, obviously not the same ghost. Soon, Do also lightly revealed her identity. I remember, your name is Keishui. Why do you want to seek your own death? Hearing Beidou's words, the snake ghost suddenly jumped up and rushed towards Beidou again. Undoubtedly, she is Iguro Obanai's cousin, and the only survivor of the Iguro family, Iguro Seisui. Likewise, he was also the one who led the way for Beidou earlier. At this moment, only cowardice and hysterical hatred remained on Yihei Keishui's immature face. The result of the fusion of these two emotions is complete madness. Kill you, I must kill you. It was you who destroyed my family and saved that traitor. Keishui rushed towards Beidou recklessly, but unfortunately, with her negligible strength, she would be sent to death. Sure enough, in an instant, the Nichiren blades had fallen. The thick tail turned to ashes. Ah! Keishui wailed in pain, and tears flowed from her eyes. Why did you do this? Our family can obviously prosper for a long time, why do you want to destroy him? Little Barney. Facing Yihei Keishui's cries, Beidou showed no sympathy. The moment she chooses to become a ghost, it symbolizes that she has fallen, and there is no possibility of turning back. Finally, the Nichiren blade slashed across her tender neck. As the moonlight fell, her dirty snake body disappeared little by little. Wow! Beidou put away the blade, looked at the house built with carved railings and jade, a strange magic tempted him, and walked into it. In his mind, Iguro Obanai's request sounded. Quote. Mr. Beidou, although I don't know. Why is that snake ghost still alive, and how did Sister Wei find her? But I can feel that the Yihei family has been hiding some secrets all these years, in the depths of the cell. If you need, just take those gold and silver treasures, I just want to know. What is that secret? After a while, Beidou walked into the cell where Snake Zoo was held again. He clearly observed that there were countless bloody handprints and traces carved with fingernails on the wall. According to Iguro Obanai himself, he has been imprisoned here since he was born. Although the mother, elder sister, and younger sisters would send rich food every day, they only use the snake pillar as a sacrifice from the beginning to the end. A sacrifice to the snake ghost. Even the wound on Iguro Obanai's face is thanks to her. Finally, one day, Snake Zoo escaped from the cell with the help of D. Lily's Maru, and met Rengoku Mojiro, who rushed to kill Snake C. It's not that he didn't think about what happened to the clansmen after he left. However, when she heard the news of her death from her cousin, she finally broke down and chose to leave here completely. The reason why I came back to Hachiho Island again is not only for my cousin. He also wanted to witness with his own eyes what the Yihei family was hiding. Now, this mission is in the hands of Bike. Beidou gently pushed open the fence door, his gaze resting on a wall. There is a strange Bai symbol. At the top is a character of Shi, on the left and right are two forks, and at the bottom is the wood supporting the whole. Suddenly, Beidou's pupils shrank slightly, and his heart was full of mixed feelings. This is not a symbol, but a character in seal script. At this moment, the entire dungeon was silent. In such a dark environment, in contrast to the damp and dirty, the capitalized Chin characters on the wall are exceptionally clear. It is obviously thick black, but because of the refraction of the moonlight, there was a touch of gold. After a long time, Beidou came back to his senses and fell into deep thought. On the remote waters of the island country, why does the inscription Chin Dynasty appear? Especially in the dungeon of the Yihei family. What exactly is going on here? Before he knew it, Beidou stretched out his hand, and his fingertips lightly touched the character Chin. In an instant, a wonderful force emerged and quickly enveloped him. In Beidou's mind, there is also a dull and strange memory. In 219 BC, an alchemist was sent by the first emperor to the East China Sea. He led 3,000 boys and girls in search of the elixir of immortality. After the alchemist arrived in Kamana, Kishu, he ordered the boys and girls to search for it by boat. Unexpectedly, the boat was washed away by the waves on the way, and the maiden's boat floated to Hachiho Island. There are many women here, so Hachiho Island is also called Nursemaid Island and Nijima Island. Hearing this, Bei finally understood the history of Hachiho Island. As for the name of the alchemist, it is even more ready to be revealed. It was Shu Fu who was ordered to go east. For thousands of years, the legend left by Shu Fu has never stopped, and it has always been a topic that people talk about. Some people say that before he found the sacred mountain, he stopped in the island country and became king himself, and taught the local people how to farm, fish, whale and weave paper. He was the ancestor of the Japanese people. Some people said that he found the elixir and learned the secret of immortality. What's more, it is believed that Shu Fu's entry into the sea was to escape Qin Shi Huang's tyranny, and he was a planned overseas emigration. All kinds of legends are intertwined, and there is still no conclusion. Until this moment, at the moment when he saw the character Qin, Beidou vaguely thought about something. Feeling the fluctuations from his fingertips, a strange color flashed in Beidou's eyes. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. Behind the dungeon wall, a powerful air wave burst out suddenly, making BGDE howling sounds in the empty corridor. Woo! It was clearly the sound of the wind blowing, but no matter how it sounded like a woman crying. Beidou frowned and held the handle of the knife involuntarily. Soon, the character Qin in front of him burst into dazzling light. It was also at this moment that Beidou's monster power arranged around the Yihei family trembled unimaginably. I'm gone in the past, Yangliu Yi. I'm here today, the wind and the grass are luxuriant. Hearing this weeping female voice, Beto's pupils shrank suddenly. He thought it was a refugee or a beast on the island, but now it seems that it is far from that simple. As expected by Beto, that chilling cry invaded his mind. Walking slowly, carrying thirst and hunger. My heart is sad, don't know I'm sad. Finally, the heavy atmosphere crushed the dungeon, and all the fences were destroyed in an instant. In Beto's ears, the system's notification tone also sounded. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully arriving at the sign-in location, and the sign-in officially begins. The sign-in time is 1 hour, and if you quit halfway, it will be considered a sign-in failure. 1 hour. The moment Beto heard this number, Beto couldn't help heaving a sigh of relief, but a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Because he knows that this is just the beginning. Sure enough, the system beep did not disappear. Ding! Please complete the task within the specified time, Ma Ching. Requirement: kill all dead souls on the island. Beto finally understood where the crying came from. This is not a treasure left by Shufu at all, but a trap set by him. When he learned from Iguro Obanai that his family could only have girls, Beto noticed a strangeness. Now, he finally understood the reason. The reason why boys cannot be born is because there is too much yin qi in the underground cell, and the source of yin qi. It is the ghost of a virgin left by Shufu Dongdu thousands of years ago. Those fragile girls, who lost the protection of men, lived and slept on a barren land like Hachiho Island, and died not long after. After they died, because of the resentment and hatred in their hearts, they turned into ghosts. In order to get rid of these ghosts, Shufu suppressed them on Bazong Island, and once someone came into contact with the cursed seal, all these ghosts would be mobilized. But they have lost their minds. An empty shell. In this case, a riot and chaos. It happened naturally. I see. Feeling the coercion from all directions and the coldness in the air, he showed a contemptuous smile. Shufu, is this what you expected? Unfortunately, you seem to be failing. The reason is simple, for him. Clearing up these thoughtless dead souls is just a matter of little effort. But Beto couldn't help laughing at the thought of being calculated by people thousands of years ago. This debt, he will get it back sooner or later. Walking slowly, carrying thirst and hunger. My heart is sad, don't know I'm sad. The cry sounded again, and in the next second, galloping figures appeared in the dark dungeon. It was a virgin who stayed on Hachiho Island back then. It's just that they have become dilapidated now, and only killing and hatred are left in their minds. Seeing this picture, Beto quietly held the Nichiren blades. At the same time, he slowly closed his eyes. It's time for this farce to end. Just let me give you a result. Resentment lingers, anger fills the sky. The soaring whistling sound almost filled the entire underground cell, and the wailing of dead souls was everywhere. Through the moonlight penetrating in, they could vaguely see their faces. Their faces were clearly icy and muscular, but after they died, they were bitten by mosquitoes and turned into faces like old tree bark. Not to mention the body, which has gradually turned into nothingness. Just relying on those faces that are so fragrant and jaded, one can indirectly feel how much they have suffered. These innocent girls traveled thousands of miles to this barren place because of Shufu's suggestion to find a fairy medicine. Became the sacrificial object of his ambition. And after they died, Shufu used these dead souls to set up an imminent trap to remove traces of his own existence. In this way, no one will discover his secret, let alone find himself. And if Beto didn't come to here today, perhaps, when the power of the cursed seal disappears, they will break through the cage by themselves and bring disaster to the entire Hachiho Island. The resulting casualties will be unpredictable. Listening to the cries of ghosts beside his ears, Beto remained silent, and tightly held the Nichiren blades in his hands. In the dark, he has already noticed that there is a real flame on the blade. It is the resentment of the dead souls. Awakened the Nichiren blades. The next moment, Beto smiled, and slowly raised the blade, looking directly at the scattered souls. Are you excited too? Perhaps it's time to make a fuss. Before the words fell, Beto flew out directly, turning into a ball of shining light. It is Sesumaru's ability, the movement of light. He waved the blade lightly, and with just a few breaths, he cleared an open space, and a dozen dead souls disappeared in an instant. Just as those dead souls disappeared, Beto suddenly opened his eyes wide. Because in his mind, a deafening voice sounded loudly. Roar. This familiar sound was exactly the roar of the dragon that I heard that day when I was cultivating in Mount Sagiri. The source is the Nichiren blades in his hand. With a wave of the blade, more than a dozen dead souls fell, and the blade of Nichiren blades was also red hot. Sure enough, your strength doesn't stop there. Just let me see your true power. Thinking of this, Beidou didn't hesitate any longer, smashed the fence that blocked him with one foot, and rushed into the group of dead souls. The powerful monster power bloomed out of thin air. He almost turned into a ray of light, and those dead souls who wanted to attack him. At the moment when it touched the white light, it was reduced to nothing. It's like hitting a stone with a pebble. Roar. The roar of the dragon continued, and soon, under Beidou's relentless offensive, most of the dead souls had already perished. And the rest seemed to feel the fear instinctively, curled up in the corner. Just then, the mutation happened again. Among the surviving souls, a faint light flickered, and surrounded by some luminous objects, they came to Beidou. After careful observation, it turned out to be a red projectile. At the moment Hongwan appeared, all the dead souls howled more intensely, rushing towards the light one by one. Afterwards, under the infection of the souls of the dead, the color of the red pill deepened bit by bit, forming a black mist. Seeing this scene, Beidou couldn't help shrinking his pupils. Because he already guessed what it was. The elixir of immortality. To be more precise, it is the medicine that Qin Shihuang pursued hard and Shu Fu extracted. Unexpectedly, it was hidden in this dungeon. What makes Beidou curious is whether this elixir really has the effect of delaying death. Under the influence of the elixir, those nearly withered souls did not die immediately, but under the powerful medicinal power. Beginning to fuse and form a whole. Holding the Nichiren blades, Beidou sighed. It seems that it's a little trickier than I imagined. Gradually, the monster gathered by the dead souls also revealed its ugly face. Countless pairs of eyes stared at Beidou, full of resentment. Countless mouths uttered pain without stopping for a moment. Especially that elixir, it became the monster's heart, beating thumping. Roar. Feeling the monster's boundless resentment, the Nichiren blades in Beidou's hands suddenly burst out with dazzling color training. The golden light was shining brightly, illuminating the entire dungeon in daylight. Faintly, a familiar voice surged out. It was the fire dragon dormant in Nichiren blades. Roar. Beidou opened his eyes and unexpectedly stopped attacking. It wasn't that he felt fear, but was shocked by what happened next. Seeing the fire dragon appear, the monster that was entrenched opened its mouth wide, and a strange black shadow flew out. Roar. That meandering shape and appearance is also a dragon. Its color has been dyed black, its eyes have changed from clear to cloudy, and the place where the dragon's tail is connected. It was the elixir of immortality. One red and one black are facing each other, the distance between them is only a few meters. At this moment, the system notification sound is coming to an end. Roar. The fiery red dragon, which symbolizes the Nichiren blades, uttered a shocking roar and rushed towards the monster. Not to be outdone, the black dragon chose to attack. The two sides collide, rush to the top, tear. This extraordinary battle made the entire dungeon tremble. Only Beidou, who was holding the Nichiren blades, remained motionless. Finally, at a certain moment, the fire dragon gained the upper hand. It opened the dragon's mouth, wrapped the black dragon's body with flames, and devoured its body bit by bit. And in the eyes of the black dragon, tears of relief also flowed out. After the black dragon shed tears of remorse, an unspeakable feeling flowed in Beidou's heart. Somehow, he saw another picture. Only this time, the protagonist is no longer those boys and girls, but a gray-clothed man with a thin figure and a white beard. In contrast, is a huge bronze alchemy furnace. It was the alchemist Shu Fu. In the jade bottle in his hand, there are flaming red pills, obviously just taken out of the pill furnace. When looking at these pills, what Shu Fu showed in his eyes was not coveting, but a meaningful smile. It seems that for him, these are not life-saving medicines. It is a tool of power. At this point, the memories come to an abrupt end, and the last scene. It was Shu Fu's breathtaking eyes. Also at this moment, Beidou's heart skipped a beat, and a sense of astonishment that involved his soul rose spontaneously. In the dungeon, the roaring fiery red dragon suddenly opened its eyes. A pair of eyes exuded fiery heat, and in an instant, bright gold surged out. Obviously, it absorbed the power from the elixir. At the same time, the fiery red dragon also let out a shocking roar. King Qin's great rule, the world is clearly visible. The Zulong is ordered, and the world will be wiped out. This majestic momentum caused the entire underground prison to collapse like a cliff. One prison after another immediately collapsed, stirring up billows of dust. Only Beidou among them has no live art points, because wherever he can reach, there are rolling thunder and raging flames. Boom! Looking up, several thunderbolts suddenly fell, completely destroying the century-old foundation of the Yihei family, and the whole house was bathed in fire. All the gold and silver treasures were melted into streams, watered and flowing freely. At the same time, Beidou also slowly stood up and stretched out his hand towards the fire dragon. It wasn't until this moment that he really saw the fire dragon clearly. It was an existence beyond the material form. Standing in the deep darkness was a scorching hot light. Sacred, noble, inviolable. It was also at this moment that an unspeakable connection was born between Beidou and the fire dragon. From now on, I will be there for you. Kill all enemies in the world. In an instant, the flames and lightning exploded to the extreme, and the demon power suddenly flourished. And the counting of the system in the mind has also ushered in the end. Ding! Congratulations to the host, the sign-in was successful. Mission reward. Unseal the name of the sword. In a trance, Beidou clenched the handle of the knife with all his strength, only feeling full of strength all over his body, and couldn't help but let out a cry. Zhu Rong. When the last word fell, the entire dungeon collapsed, and the dust turned into thick smoke and retreated. Hachiho Island, which seemed to be centered on Beidou, was also shaken violently. As for the monster formed by the condensed soul of the dead, it had already been wiped out in the flames and thunder, and fell into the cycle of reincarnation. The stars are dotted, filling the surroundings. Jumping for joy among Beidou is the knife that got its name. Zhu Rong. It was also at this moment that Beidou finally understood where the confinement he had felt for a long time came from. Now, after completely devouring that pill, Zhu Rong also untied the seal. And looking around Beidou, where there is still a tile fence, the destructive power caused is no less than a giant bomb. As for Beidou, who was standing in the center, his eyes stayed on the knife. The black cover has faded away, and the entire blade is flooded with scorching heat and guilt, as if it has a soul, humming. Seeing this, the corners of Beidou's mouth twitched, revealing a faint smile. It seems that you are more mysterious than I imagined. Just the name Zhu Rong is enough to surprise Beidou. Because that is not any god of the island country, but the god of fire in Chinese mythology. There are also different opinions on the legend of Zhu Rong. Some people say that he transformed the Red Emperor with fire and inspired the spirits of the Li people. There are also rumors that he was appointed by the Yellow Emperor as Situ, in Feft Chu, and became the ancestor of the Chu people. All in all, Beidou couldn't be more familiar with this name. Unexpectedly, in such a foreign land with mountains and rivers, it is really a kind of luck to hear Zhu Rong's name again. More importantly, after going through the transformation just now, Beidou found that this knife already possesses spirituality. At the same time, it also transmitted an important message to Beidou. A larger part of the reason why Zhu Rong was able to unseal the name of the sword came from the secret in that elixir. Unlike it, the filthy black dragon did not come from Tianzhong. It is a vision transformed by the heroic spirit among mortals. In short, it is a part of the soul of Zulong. And the reason why the black dragon appeared here. It was Shu Fu who stole a trace of dragon soul from Qin Shuang and used it to cast the so-called immortal medicine. There are still a few pills like this. After learning about this incident, Beidou not only did not have any fear, but his spirits were lifted. In his pair of clear eyes, there are lightning and flames intertwined and jumping happily. As Beidou raised his right hand high, Zhu Rong also reflected the light of the sky. At this moment, it is dawn. When Beidou walked out of the dungeon, he turned around and looked. The Yihei family, which had been prosperous for more than 300 years, was completely reduced to ruins from this moment. All its dirty and despicable activities were burnt up under Zhu Rong's holy light and coercion. After Beidou left, there was a dead silence here for a moment. Those souls who have been trapped for more than 3,000 years have finally been liberated, and they no longer have to cry out for hatred. And Beidou is also feeling the unprecedented experience at his fingertips. As if as long as he had a thought. There will be countless thunder and flames descending, washing away this filthy world. Beidou smiled lightly, and left Hachiho Island in a flat boat. Before leaving, he looked in the direction of Asakusa, Tokyo, and smiled meaningfully. This world is dirty again. While Beidou purged the 3,000 dead souls, Iguro Obanai and Yusui Tengen rushed back to the headquarters of the Ghost Slayer squad. When Ubuyashiki Kagaya learned of this, he left the courtyard non-stop, with the support of Himahima Kume. Go to meet the two. At the same time, he also guessed that Beidou would act alone. After all, it is not the style of a demon pillar to follow the crowd. My lord, sure enough, shortly after Ubuyashiki descended the mountain, two fast-moving figures appeared in his field of vision. It is the returning sound snake Shuangju. When they saw Ubuyashiki Kagaya in person, the two were naturally very moved, even a self-proclaimed cold-blooded animal like Iguro Obanai. It is also inevitable that the eye sockets are moist. But for him, it was more of an apology than gratitude. I saw Iguro Obanai waving his sleeves and kneeling in front of him on one knee. My lord, because of me, Tengen and Beidou were almost in danger, and a lot of time was wasted. Please also punish me. Seeing this scene, even if Yusui Tengen and him are good friends, he can only show a wry smile. In the silence, Ubuyashiki silently nodded in the face of Snake Ju's remorse. Yes, you should be punished. Hearing these words, Iguro Obanai sighed and lowered his head. He originally wanted to go back to Hachiho Island, solve the secret that has been troubled for many years with his own hands, and repay the guilt in his heart. However, when he met the snake ghost who came back to life, and his cousin who turned into a ghost, Yihei Xiao and was frightened, he lost his self-respect again. It wasn't until the appearance of Beidou and Yusui Tengen that he was dragged back from the abyss and saved this inferior soul. It is also because of this that Snake Zu truly realized his mistake, and his weakness and helplessness. Just when the sword was on the verge of breaking out, a hand fell on Yihei Xiaohui's shoulder. I will punish you. Responsible for 1 month's cleaning work, plus deducting 3 months' monthly salary. The moment he heard these words, Iguro Obanai's pupils shrank slightly, showing disbelief. He looked up, and Ubuyashiki's gentle gaze met his eyes. Shizu couldn't help being shocked, because this level of punishment was completely painless. Under the puzzled gaze of Iguro Obanai, Bayushiki also explained the reason. Presumably, Mr. Beidou doesn't want to see you looking down and down. After all, he just rescued you. Hearing this, Snake Zu realized that Ubuyashiki was looking at Beidou's face. Thinking of this, he nodded deeply, and the last grievance in his heart disappeared. Like Iguro Obanai, even Yusui Tengen, who talks about magnificence and arrogance through this action, he is already convinced by Beidou. Throughout the ghost-killing squad, there was no longer any discord. If nothing else, Beidou, a rising star, will lead a new direction. At this moment, the mutation happened suddenly. Ubuyashiki lifted the snake pillar lightly, but in the next second, a powerful sense of oppression suddenly descended. Immediately afterwards, an unimaginable spectacle appeared in the sky. Boom! One after another thick thunderbolts descended from the sky. The speed could not be captured by the naked eye, only the shocking popping sound could be heard. It seems to be a giant dragon hanging from the sky, falling into the mortal world. In an instant, the sense of oppression disappeared at the moment when the thunder dissipated. As if nothing happened. At the same time, everyone in the headquarters of the ghost-killing squad gradually came to their senses. What just happened? I seem to see a dragon. No, it's thunder and lightning. Thunder. Is God angry? Ubuyashiki raised his head slowly, staring at the thunder with cloudy white eyes. He seems to have captured a trace of the trajectory, but he is not sure. In contrast, Iguro Obanai, who was kneeling on one knee, was suddenly dumbfounded. No, it's impossible. Could it be him? Zhao Hao. As for the source of thunder, Snake Zu had vaguely guessed the answer, but no matter what, he couldn't accept this fact. Because the unbelievable scene just now was not caused by manpower at all, but the punishment of God. But in the end, Iguro Obanai bowed his head. An indisputable fact is before us. That direction is Hachiho Island. Beidou, are you human or Shinfeng? Far away in a certain mountain, those long-awaited eyes also rekindled their fighting spirit. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and dropped an arm. And the direction the eyes are looking at is exactly the route of Beto's return journey. Finally I find you. Meanwhile, a temple outside Asakusa, Tokyo Prefecture. A young man in a red and black cassock was looking at the direction to his left, slightly lost in thought. Seeing this situation, the attendants beside him couldn't help asking, "Master, what's wrong with you? Need to check it out." Hearing this sentence, the young man smiled and shook his head, showing a cynical face, white oak hair color, colorful eyes, and a touch of blood in the hair. "That flash of lightning just now seems a bit strange." The entourage nodded and echoed. "That's true, but the weather has been dry recently, and it's reasonable to hear thunder." The young man showed a playful smile, and opened his pale fingers. "I'm afraid it has nothing to do with the weather, maybe it's human beings." As if he had thought of something, the young man didn't delve into it any further, but shook his head self-consciously. "Forget it, let the adults worry about these things, let's go." "Yes, oh, that's right." The corner of the young man's mouth raised slightly, and he took out a tissue to wipe off the blood from the corner of his mouth. "Next time, believers, remember to be younger." As soon as these words came out, followers felt a thump in their hearts, and a shudder suddenly shivered down their backs. He was afraid that the young man would say something again, so he quickly nodded his head. "Yes, please don't worry." The two left silently, looking around, at the place where they just stopped. There was an arm still bleeding, with red nails, which seemed to be the limb of a young woman. At the same time, a ship also ushered in the territory of Tokyo Prefecture. Patter. Standing at the bow of the boat was a young man holding a sword, his expression neither sad nor happy, completely ignoring the noisy gulls and sea breeze. It's worth mentioning that the boy obviously didn't have an oar. However, the ship was moving at an extremely fast speed, as if an invisible force was pushing it to slide. When they were still 1 or 2 meters away from the shoreline, the boy jumped lightly. "Get on the ground." Finally came back. Looking at the bustling Tokyo Bay, Beto smiled and silently blended into the sea of people. Coincidentally, a boatman pulling a net on the shore noticed Beto. "Where have I seen that person?" Looking at Beto's back from a distance, the boatman suddenly widened his eyes. Immediately, he yelled, "Yes, it's him. How is it possible? He came back alive." The boatman swallowed deeply, and quickly put his head into the basket, as if afraid of being seen by Beto. He looked like a frightened ostrich. On the other side, Beto has already walked into the bustling street, his silent figure is out of tune with the surroundings. He did not choose to return to the headquarters. The reason why he did so was to try his luck. What if you meet that person? Beto took a deep breath, and with his super sense of smell, it was not difficult to recognize that there was an ogre smell in this area. Although Asakusa, Tokyo Prefecture is full of people, and because of the solitary characteristics of ogres, they tend to avoid such places, but there is one person who doesn't mind here. That is King of Oni Katakana middle. Kibutsuji Muzan. At this time, he has not been exposed by Tanjiro, and he is still showing his identity as Yuyan, playing the role of a good husband and a good father. The purpose of Beto's trip is to find him. BGBA. Gradually, Beto walked into a narrow alley, and with the dim light, he could barely see the road ahead clearly. However, he stopped suddenly after walking for a long time. Because something dripped on his clothes. Beto smiled faintly, then raised his head, and at some point above him, a dark figure appeared. Gulu. That disgusting sound is someone swallowing saliva. My uncle has been hungry for so long, and finally got a bad guy. It looks like I can have a full meal today. There is no doubt that it is a ghost. Hearing the other party talking to himself, Beto's eyes lit up, as if he had thought of something interesting. This guy might be able to help himself. In the next second, the ghost that was originally stuck on the wall suddenly twitched its legs and rushed towards Beto. His explosive power is astonishing, like a gecko's tongue. The most important thing is that in such a narrow environment, Beto has no room to dodge at all, which is why the ghosts are ambushing here. Everyone who passed the alley became his supper. Suddenly, Beto picked up the knife with his fingertips. Clang! A flash of white light flashed, and almost turned into a substantial wave of air, which shattered the walls on both sides one after another. Also at this moment, a dark shadow appeared in front of Beto. It was the ogre with its mouth wide open. It's a pity that he didn't take another step forward, but stopped 1 meter away from Beto, shaking violently all over his body. That is not feeling cold, but a kind of fear from the soul. Who is this person? Why does he have an aura that is more terrifying than adults? What shocked the ogre the most was that he was frozen without seeing Beto's movements clearly. I have a few questions I want to ask you. Under the moonlight, Beto narrowed his eyes slightly, and all he could hear was the ghost's heartbeat. Where is he? What are you talking about? I don't understand. In desperation, the ghost was already sweating profusely, and wanted to take this opportunity to escape. Unfortunately, with his negligible strength, he couldn't escape Beto's 5 fingers mountain at all. Wow! As Beto fiddled with the blade, a group of rapid and violent flames surrounded the ghost's body, making him nowhere to hide. There are wolves in front and tigers in back, and ogres with wings, difficult to fly. Okay. He sighed deeply, as if he had made a major decision, and knelt down in front of Beto. That person is hiding in a secret house on the outskirts of Tokyo Prefecture. I don't know why, ordinary people can't see that house at all, even I entered by mistake. At that time, I felt that I was being watched by a pair of eyes, and I escaped without thinking. Speaking of this, the ogre couldn't help but shivered, obviously thinking of something terrible. Good. Beto smiled lightly, and there was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. Obviously he just nodded slightly, and in the eyes of the ogre, it was an unimaginable sense of oppression. Because at that second, he suddenly felt like he was being targeted by a beast. But I have clearly become a ghost. Here, my lord, I don't know if you can hold your hands high now. Spare me this poor life. He knelt on his knees, begging Beto to remove the sword hanging above his head. It's a pity that at the moment he said the answer, he undoubtedly accelerated his own death. The only thing that can be won, I am afraid, is early relief. Sure enough, with Beto picking it up lightly, those burning flames suddenly rose and quickly spread to the ghost's whole body. In the silence, he quietly disappeared. After solving the ghost, Beto didn't stay any longer, but set his sights on the outskirts of Asakusa, Tokyo. Perhaps, there was something he wanted there. In the middle of the night, Beto left the Asakusa neighborhood and finally came to the suburbs. Through his keen sense of smell, without much effort, he smelled that all too familiar smell. The stench of ghosts and fresh blood. After obtaining the power of Sesshomaru, Beto's perception of this world has already multiplied. Not just the smell, even the sound of breathing, heartbeat. Even emotional fluctuations will become the elements of Beto's judgment. This also makes all enemies hide in front of him. At this time, it was already 2 o'clock in the middle of the night, which happened to be the time when ogres were active. Walking in the pitch-black darkness, Beto narrowed his eyes slightly, and soon he locked onto the target. It's a kind of more obvious hostility. Roar! As expected, a black shadow jumped out and rushed towards Beto. Together with the stones under his feet, they were also crushed during the running, which is enough to show how terrifying this ghost's power is. Clang! Under the dim moonlight, Beto could vaguely see his face. It was a man with disheveled hair, wearing a rough cloth, covered with mud and grass, looking extremely embarrassed. And on his murderous face, 3 strange red spots were drawn. Exactly corresponds to a letter. Seeing this ghost, Beto shook his head and let out a helpless sigh. Because, he is not the target he is looking for. Just when Beto was about to pull out Zurong, a voice sounded from behind him. It was a gentle female voice. Careful. Before the words were finished, there was a pink fragrance floating in front of Beto. What is even more shocking is that in the face of the attack of the ogre, not only was the scent not being dispersed, but it acted as a buffer and hindered his actions. What the hell is this thing that dares to stop my uncle? The ghost failed in one blow, and suddenly became irritable, but the hunger in its eyes did not diminish in the slightest. Soon, 2 figures gradually came out from the darkness and stopped behind Beto. The first one was a woman in a purple kimono, with a pretty face and an elegant figure, but there was a hint of worry hanging between her brows. Walking with him was a young boy with young hair, always frowning, who seemed to be the woman's domestic servant or entourage. Noticing Beto's dilemma, the woman in kimono couldn't bear it and was about to speak. But when he saw that ghost, a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. He glanced at the woman in purple and the boy, and there was a touch of disdain in his eyes. I thought there was another dinner delivered to my door, so I was happy for nothing. It turns out, it's the two of you who don't know how to live or die. The ghost with the character H on its face suddenly thought of something, and rubbed its palms excitedly. If I remember correctly, you are still on the adults wanted list until now. As long as I kill you, I can get some ghost blood again. Hearing these threatening words, the purple-clothed woman's face changed slightly, and she obviously sensed something. This ghost, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Listen, my uncle is Kamanu. As long as I kill all of you, maybe I can become Shangxian. In an instant, Kamanu kicked his legs and launched a sprint towards the two, ignoring Beidou. It seemed to him that a weak human being like Beidou could be easily dealt with. Hearing the word Kamanu, Beidou also remembered who he was. It was Jin Shang, who was sent to death from the city by Kibutsuji Muzan at the purge meeting. Also, where Kamanu didn't see it, there was a hint of a smile on the corner of Beidou's mouth. In the next second, he had pulled out Zhu Rong. Excuse me, have I been ignored? Chapter 89. Die. The land of the last string. Kamanu laughed wildly, and ran towards the two of them like a cheetah, with saliva on his tongue. As if in his eyes, the woman in purple and the boy. They are like two lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Looking at Kamanu approaching quickly, the woman in purple frowned slightly, and called out the name of the person beside her. Yushiro. Yes. Before he finished speaking, the young-haired boy raised his arms, and a curse mark was created out of thin air in the open space centered on his feet. Gradually, the curse seal surrounded the two of them, forming a barrier. Small tricks. Seeing these fancy moves, the practice of kettle is also very simple. Punch first and talk later. With a bang, Kamanu's fist had landed on the curse mark, and he was instantly shaken. His blood ghost technique is related to the strengthening of his 467 body, which can cause damage to the contact object at the moment of attack. Therefore, the mere defense created with the curse seal could not withstand Kamanu's offensive at all. Destruction, sooner or later. Seeing this scene, the green-haired boy looked a little astonished. But the woman in purple was not too surprised. Sure enough, is it because he played the bow? After thinking of Kamanu's identity, the woman in purple also showed a clear look. Among 12 Kazuki, although the strength of the ghost of the lower string is not comparable to that of the ghost of the upper string. But compared to medical personnel like Yushiro, he is still much stronger. Up to now, she can only solve it by herself. Yushiro, let me do it. Miss Tamayo. The moment he heard this sentence, Yushiro shook his head instinctively, but the woman in purple clothes had already started the technique. It was her blood ghost technique. Confused blood visual fantasy fragrance. Unexpectedly, in the next second, a voice sounded from behind Kamanu. The taste of being ignored. It's not good. In an instant, a certain kind of powerful coercion descended suddenly, spreading with a destructive force. Kamanu, who was still clamoring non-stop just now, is also at this moment. The ground under his feet collapsed suddenly, and his knees fell uncontrollably until he knelt in front of that person. This is. Feeling an unimaginable energy spreading without any sign of weakening, the beautiful eyes of the woman in purple twitched. She stares blankly at Kamanu. To be precise, it was the knife hanging on the forehead of the cauldron. Fiery red, scorching hot. As well as the kind of power that makes people want to surrender, the woman in purple was shocked. It's the swordsman from just now, he didn't leave. No, Yushiro also widened his eyes, showing disbelief. In contrast, Kamanu's reaction was more direct, and he was already dumbstruck. Even before the thought of begging for mercy came into being, it had already disappeared under Zhu Rong's aura. Goodbye, stupid thing. Beidou smiled faintly, swung Zhu Rong's sword tip, and a wisp of residue disappeared with the wind. For him, there is not much left to slaughter Shashian Y. Perhaps, only pray closer to Kibutsuji Muzan. To arouse his interest. Miss Tamayo, he seems to be. Hearing Yushiru's exclamation, Tamayo also came back to his senses and shook his head at him. She was still elegant and free 1 second before, but she was extremely dignified the next second. It seems that for Tamayo, the threat posed by the man in front of him. It completely overwhelms any 12 Kazuki, and only that existence can be close to incomparable to it. Feeling the terrified gaze of the two ghosts, Beidou didn't pay any attention. Most importantly, Beidou has recognized their identities. Thinking of the information revealed by that ghost in Asakusa, Tokyo, Beidou couldn't help laughing. If I knew it earlier, I would ask for details. Instead of Kibutsuji Muzan, it is Yushiro and Miss Tamayo who are lurking here. At this moment, the dim forest was horribly silent. Miss Tamayo looked nervously at the person in front of her. She thought that Beidou, who was a ghost swordsman, would attack her. After all, she and Yushiro are cannibals, one of the targets of the ghost-killing squad. But why? Beidou didn't show any signs of drawing his sword. Similar to Ms. Tamayo's reaction, Yushiro, as Ghost Slayer's first dog licker, naturally protected her by her side. Through the performance of Beidou killing Kaminu just now, Yushiro clearly felt the swordsman in front of him. It has surpassed his cognition, and killing himself is just a matter of effort. Yushiro, step back. What? Hearing Ms. Tamayo's indifferent voice, Yushiro was puzzled, but still made way. Miss Tamayo frowned slightly. After a battle between heaven and man, she made a major decision. Sir, may I have a chat with you? Please forgive my previous presumptuousness. I think you can also see that we have no malicious intentions. Beidou nodded slightly. In fact, it was true. When facing Kaminu just now, Tamayo's first reaction was to ask Yushiro to save herself, which is enough to see her sincerity. That's why Beidou didn't do anything. Otherwise, they would have been reduced to ashes with Kaminu. Seeing Beidou nod his head, Tamayo breathed a sigh of relief and bravely stepped out of the darkness, followed by Yushiro. It was also until this moment that Beidou saw the whole picture of Tamayo clearly. Wearing an elegant and dignified purple kimono with cherry blossom patterns embroidered on it, it reveals a kind of intellectual and mature beauty, which is the unique gentleness of island women. It's a pity that on such a beautiful face, there are inextricable worries and melancholy, which makes people feel lost. And this is also related to Miss Tamayo's past. More than 200 years ago, when she was still human, she was terminally ill. In order to be able to see her child grow up safely, Miss Tamayo was deceived by Kibutsuji Muzan to become. She thought she could live a healthy life, but unexpectedly, she was affected by the ghost blood in her body and killed her family members. From then on, for atonement, but also for peace of mind, Tamayo got rid of Muzan's control with his own power and overcame the desire for human blood. Although he couldn't do the same as Nezuko, he could survive with only a small amount of human blood. Most importantly, she is willing to become a doctor and live in seclusion in Tokyo in order to save those who become ghosts and to eliminate Kibutsuji Muzan. And Yushiro beside her, also in a dying state, allowed Ms. Tamayo to turn herself into a ghost and stay by her side ever since. Such two ghosts are not the targets of Beidou's hunt for the time being. What's more, Miss Tamayo still has a secret in her hands. She is researching medicine that turns ghosts back into humans. Miss Tamayo, be careful. Before he could say a few words, Yushiro, whose face was as pale as a sheet of paper, was ready to fight, and tightly guarded Ms. Tamayo behind him. For him, Ms. Tamayo is not only a savior, but also his light and direction, which must not be violated by anyone. Seeing this picture, a smile appeared on the corner of Beidou's mouth. What's wrong with doing it? You have to do dog licking. Thinking of this, Beidou didn't mind teaching Yushiro a lesson, letting him understand the gap between him and himself. It's obviously a ghost, but you want to negotiate terms with me. Don't be afraid of my sword. Kill you. As the last word fell, almost in the blink of an eye, a strong sense of oppression came suddenly, firmly pressing on the shoulders of the two ghosts. Murderous intent, sharpened murderous intent. It seems that as long as Beidou has a thought, the young lady and Yushiro will die unexpectedly. Especially the sense of powerlessness made them feel terrified from the bottom of their hearts. Miss Zhu 16th. Resisting the overwhelming pressure, Yushiro stretched out his arms to block Tamayo, trying to act as her last defense. It's a pity that with his three-legged skill, he couldn't hold on for a few seconds at all. Hearing a clatter, Yushiro, who was gnashing his teeth just now, has already knelt down in front of Beidou like a mother-in-law. He raised his head stiffly, and a pair of cold eyes met his eyes. Beidou was looking at him condescendingly, like a god who couldn't look directly at him. I don't seem to have asked you to speak. My lord, I'm really sorry. Seeing this situation, Miss Tamayo's face changed slightly, and she hurriedly bowed to Beidou. Yushiro is still young, so I don't mean to be hostile. I beg you to spare him this time. In just a moment, Tamayo really understood the difference between bike and wagon. If Kibutsuji Muzan is a mountain, she feels unattainable. Then Beidou is the immeasurable sky, just one eye, one thought can kill her. The two are completely different. In order to persuade Beidou to change his mind, Tamayo thought of countless tricks, but unfortunately, when she actually came into contact with Beidou, she found that all these were meaningless. Because the gap between man and God cannot be scaled by language. However, it was also because of Beidou's strength that a crazy idea came into Tamayo's mind. If it were him, he would definitely be able to end the terror of Kibutsuji Muzan and save those innocent people. The feud that has lasted for thousands of years will also end in his hands. Thinking of this, Tamayo lowered his head without any hesitation and said, "My lord, please let Yushiro go. Although he and I are both ghosts, we have never killed innocent people indiscriminately." Oh, obviously already guessed the reason, but looking at Tamayo's nervous expression, Beidou asked again, "I don't think I've seen a ghost that doesn't eat people." Miss Tamayo thumped in her heart, and her pretty face was filled with sorrow. It was a long time before she told her own story. When I was still human, unfortunately I was terminally ill. She recounted the past carefully, and when she mentioned Kibutsuji Muzan, her pretty face flashed with anger. The little hands were also tightly clenched into fists. Thus, I overcame the desire to eat people, and Yushiro has never eaten a person since he became a ghost. Both he and I live on a small amount of human blood. The reason why I do this is that besides healing the injured, I also have a wish. That is to eliminate Kibutsuji Muzan, revenge. Before she finished speaking, Miss Tamayo's pretty face was filled with firmness. Soon, after listening to her story, the pressure of the turbulent sea gradually disappeared, making Yushiro and Ms. Tamayo finally able to breathe a sigh of relief as if they were pardoned. Looking at Yushiro's eyes again, where is there any hatred and hostility? Yes, just fear and tension. So, what are you going to do here? Beidou smiled faintly, put Zhu Rong, who symbolized killing, into the scabbard, and swept Tamayo's face with sharp eyes. My lord, as you can see. Tamayo frowned slightly, and pointed to the position of Kamanu just now. Yushiro and I came here just to find his trace. Once this ghost is allowed to infiltrate the Tokyo prefecture, the casualties will be absolutely unpredictable. By then. Speaking of this, Tamayo seems to be hesitating. Here, maybe it will become a hell on earth. Slap. Unfortunately, Beidou was not satisfied with her words. Beidou narrowed his eyes slightly. That faint murderous intent appeared at Miss Tamayo's feet again, making him face the enemy. Do I look deceptive? No, no, my lord. Then please tell me. Beidou looked at her with interest. His eyes seemed to see through his inner thoughts. Kibutsuji Muzan, will you just watch an unknown person destroy his disguise? For a moment, Miss Tamayo was stunned. She never expected that Beidou could easily see through her loopholes. That's right, Muzan is now enjoying the life of a family of 3, so how can he just sit and watch a mere Kamanu make a fuss in Tokyo? After all, Muzan still loves to play the role of father and husband, and enjoys it. Miss Tamayo shook her head, and finally gave up the idea of testing. This man not only has absolute power, but also has keen observation and elusive thoughts. What exactly does he know? My lord, we need ghost blood. Closer to the pure blood of Kibutsuji Muzan. As long as there is enough ghost blood, I think I should be able to make a weapon to defeat him. Hearing this answer, Beidou opened his clear eyes and nodded slightly. At the same time, in an alley in Asakusa, Kyoto Prefecture, there was a man kneeling on the ground, with a humble and fearful expression, begging for mercy from another. My lord, don't kill me, please don't kill me. I will find him, I will. The voice stopped abruptly, and the man was startled suddenly, choking his throat tightly, as if he was suppressing something from erupting. However, with his insignificant strength, he is completely in the wrong. Poochie. Soon, a huge ghost hand stretched out from his mouth, pinched his head, and blood spilled all over the alley. Looking at his wretched body, it also flowed to the surroundings little by little. Watching this scene end, a man in kimono next to him buried his head deeply in the ground. Because he knows that if he dares to show any resistance, immediately, will die. Look up. Till. Listening to the gradual footsteps, Mukago's body trembled involuntarily. She was timid at first, and often ran away when fighting Zu, but seeing a ghost whose head was crushed right now, she inevitably thought of herself. After all, she hadn't found the goal Muzan had given her yet. I said, look up. Hearing this terrifying voice, finally, Mukago couldn't bear the strong coercion any longer, and stared at his stiff neck. Soon, a figure was reflected in her pupils. And a pair of empty eyes. How long has it been? Why haven't I found any news about her? Do you want me to do it myself? In the shadows, a deep male voice came. In the dim moonlight, one could vaguely see that it was a handsome and fair face, but his eyes were shining with an evil red. Judging by his appearance, he is obviously dressed as an upper-class person. On the other hand, Mukago, who was kneeling on the ground, was wearing a heavy and old cotton clothes, like a man's nanny and domestic servant. Report back to your lord, it has been a week. A week. Before the words were finished, the surrounding temperature dropped a little in an instant, making people shiver like an ice cellar. Mukago, who was in the center, shivered even more, and his hair stood on end. Within 3 days, if you can't find Tamayo again, you should know what the consequences will be. Upon hearing this, Mukago shuddered instinctively. Even though she was wearing heavy cotton clothes, she couldn't feel any warmth, even her bones felt warm. And the source of all this is the well-dressed young man in front of him. Oni King Kibutsuji Muzan. Go down. Muzan waved his hand irritably, and Mukago dared to leave. However, when she was leaving, she took a deep look at her undead colleague. With Mukago's departure, the smell of blood in this alley suddenly condensed. Soon, it turned into drops of blood and melted to Kibutsuji Muzan's feet, and the air became fresh. There was no sign of murder at all. My dear, so you are here. I thought you were going back. Following the sound, standing at the entrance of the alley was a gentle woman in a kimono with a happy look on her brows. It seems to be happy to find the youth. What is even more surprising is the half-grown child in the woman's arms. Dad. Hearing this immature voice, the man in the shadow also walked out slowly, taking the girl from the woman's hands. On Kibutsuji Muzan's face, where is the bloodshed? Yes, it's just a meticulous smile. And his current identity is not some kind of ghost king, named Yu Yan. At the same time, in a mansion outside Asakusa, Tokyo, a woman was repeating this famous minister. Looking at her beautiful face, it was Miss Tamayo. Kneeling beside her, and Yushiro, who was trembling with his head drooping, dared not make any mistakes. According to my investigation, Yuian is Muzan's pseudonym, and he has been lurking in Tokyo Prefecture for a long time with this identity. Yushiro and I observed him at close range. Unfortunately, we were discovered, and that's why we fled. Having said that, Ms. Tamayo sighed, a little fear flashed in her beautiful eyes. It seems that Kibutsuji Muzan is not a good memory for her. Mr. Beidou, these are all the information I can give. As for the medicine that I just told you about, it is still under development, and the finished product is not available for the time being. While speaking, Ms. Tamayo bowed deeply, for fear of offending the killer who closed her eyes in front of her. After all, in her eyes, it was because of this special medicine that Beidou temporarily spared the 2 lives. Sorry. Faced with Ms. Tamayo's apology, Beidou saw it in his eyes, but he didn't show any emotion on the surface. Did not even show any curious thoughts. Observing this, Ms. Tamayo was even more confused. She felt more and more that Beidou was unfathomable. If it was an ordinary ghost slayer swordsman, he would have already asked her questions with a look of horror on his face. The most important thing is that Beidou killed a ghost without any effort. How can such a skill be mediocre? Soon, Miss Tamayo thought of a possibility. Excuse me, are you Zu? Sure enough, after hearing Tamayo's inquiry, Beidou nodded lightly as a response. After getting the correct answer, Ms. Tamayo's heart stirred again. In the past few hundred years, she has seen Zu, and almost every one of them is an elite of the ghost-killing squad. But it's the first time she sees such a young and profound existence like Beidou. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is outstanding. I am afraid that he is not only Zu, but also the leader of this generation of Zu. This made Ms. Tamayo both shocked and lucky, because she found that she had inadvertently met an extraordinary person. The revenge plan is finally expected to be realized. Quote. Master Beidou, I would like to take the liberty of asking. You came to Asakusa, Tokyo, do you have any special mission? Looking at Tamayo's peaceful eyes, Beidou smiled lightly. In a light and fluttering tone, he said an earth-shattering sentence. Very simple, hunting Kibutsuji Muzan. In an instant, the atmosphere of the whole house froze, and Ms. Tamayo and Yushiro also stared wide-eyed. They never imagined that Beidou's tone was so loud. Hunting Ghost King. How confident and courageous is this to dare to say something? This. Miss Tamayo was a little embarrassed, and after a long time, she calmed down. You don't seem to be joking. But, have you actually met Kibutsuji? As Miss Tamayo spoke, Yushiro on the side raised her head boldly and looked at Beidou's face. He wanted to find even the slightest flaw in it to prove his guess. Beidou was bluffing. Unfortunately, Yushiro failed. Are you okay? Beidou's expression is still calm, without the slightest surprise, as if beheading Kibutsuji Muzan. It's just a little effort. To see or not to see, doesn't make any sense. Only at the moment of confrontation can we know who is stronger and who is weaker. Beidou narrowed his eyes slightly, and the whole person's aura suddenly changed, and the pressure of the sword leaked out unconsciously. Layer upon layer, a powerful aftermath shook Tamayo. And next, Beidou didn't stop his narration. What's more, I have absolute certainty. Miscellaneous. I won't lose. At this moment, besides the shock, there was an unspeakable enthusiasm in Ms. Tamayo's eyes. She has only seen this kind of momentum and confidence in winning in one person. The man who once drove Kibutsuji Muzan to the point of death, the swordsman who created the method of breathing. Follow the country. At that time, Tamayo had just become a ghost not long ago. Facing the fact that he killed his family members, he was heartbroken and wished to commit suicide as an apology. It's a pity that no matter how hard she tries, she can't die, only when exposed to sunlight. Only then will there be pain from the soul. But it was also at that moment that Tamayo came to his senses. Instead of giving up on himself, it is better to use this immortal body to fight Kibutsuji Muzan to the death. However, it turns out that Ms. Tamayo was thinking too simply. With her weak strength in front of Muzan, she didn't even have a chance to struggle, she could only watch herself broken and disappeared. It even turned into a puddle of scorching blood. About to die. Coincidentally, the ghost-killing team who happened to arrive drove Kibutsuji Muzan to a desperate situation and beat Muzan to a near-death state. Miss Tamayo also saved her life. Although in the end, Muzan escaped, but Miss Tamayo remembered the sword field who was like a god, Jigyu Yueni. There is no one who is known as the strongest swordsman. What's wrong? Sensing that Ms. Tamayo was a little distracted, Beidou asked suddenly. Hearing that indifferent voice, she finally came to her senses, and had a look of embarrassment on her face. Sorry, Master Beidou, I just thought of something. Beidou nodded slightly. What he didn't know was, Tamayo has already identified Beidou in his heart as the one who will end Muzan. Thinking of this, Miss Tamayo's eyes lit up with curiosity. She wanted to know where Beidou's confidence came from, or did he already have a careful plan? It's a pity that Beidou ruthlessly interrupted her before she could say these questions. How long will it take to develop that drug? After some thoughtful consideration, Miss Tamayo nodded. 3 months. Unexpectedly, the moment Beidou heard this sentence, Beidou frowned slightly. At this moment, the air suddenly became quiet. Tamayo quickly changed his tone. Of course, if more ghost blood can be collected, I believe the time will be shortened, but at the earliest. In response to Miss Tamayo's flustered expression, Beidou shook his head. Too slow. Immediately afterwards, he was endlessly chattering. What if I could give you Muzan's blood? It should be faster that way. All of a sudden, the room became quiet BGFJ, and even the beating heartbeat could be heard. Ms. Tamayo looked at Beidou in amazement, as if she had heard a story from the Arabian Nights. What do you mean? I can't wait that long. Having said that, Beidou has already stood up, looking at the starry sky outside the window. He had a premonition that since the incident on Hachiho Island, the island nation might have been peaceful for too long. Especially that illusory legend is also hiding something. Together with Kibutsuji Muzan, who thinks he is a perfect creature. They are all likely to be clowns in the eyes of others. Therefore, Beidou had to speed up and cut off and eradicate the enemies blocking him one by one. Only in this way can we unravel the fog that shrouds the direct phase. Meet the ultimate enemy. After listening to Beidou's explanation, Miss Tamayo fell into a long silence. If someone else said this, her first reaction would be to question, but when it came from Beidou. But there is no discomfort or exaggeration. As if this was the way it should be. I understand, Lord Beidou. Please also trust me, and I will fulfill my mission. After all, Miss Tamayo bowed down solemnly, facing Beidou as if she was a courtier. In front of this man, her strong disguise for many years collapsed in an instant. Only the posture of looking up is left. Beidou nodded. If that's the case, then both of you pack up and leave here with me. Hearing this sentence, Yushiro froze for a while, not understanding why. On the contrary, Miss Tamayo tapped her head and said gently, "Yes, my lord." She believed that Beidou would have a better place for herself. Soon, they packed up the packages and luggage, most of which were medicinal materials and utensils for research. Walking to the gate of the house, Tamayo looked at the familiar house with a lot of emotion. Yushiro, remember to remove the barrier, so as not to be found by others. Yes, Master Tamayo. The so-called enchantment is a technique taught to Yushiro by Ms. Tamayo, which can use spells to achieve the effect of blinding eyes, so as to conceal the existence of the house. Unfortunately, the enchantment he created was not perfect. Just when Yushiro turned his head, a pair of eyes fixed on him, and then lurked in the darkness. Meanwhile, in whispers, could it be them? Why? Another man. It was Mukago who discovered their whereabouts. Her character has always been timid and cowardly. When encountering such a situation, she will not choose to act recklessly like Kaminu. Instead, secretly follow the target, if it can't be solved. Just go to seek for an aid. Of course, Mukago didn't dare to go to Muzan, but had a better choice. If it's that adult, he must be interested in her, right? Hey, I can only count you as unlucky. Mukago smiled timidly, and immediately disappeared into the shadows, as if he was looking for someone. Miss Tamayo, who had just left the house, couldn't help frowning slightly. What's the matter, Master Tamayo? Fine. Facing Yushiru's inquiry, Tamayo shook her head. She did have a disturbed feeling. On the other hand, Beidou, who was walking in front, raised the corners of his mouth slightly from an angle they couldn't see, obviously finding something. At the same time, he clasped Zhu Rong's sword hilt with his fingertips. Are you chasing soldiers? Or, ghost blood delivered to your door? Ding! A new check-in task is released. The host is requested to go to Sensoji Temple to sign in within 3 days, and you will receive system rewards. Hearing the system's notification tone, Beidou's eyes lit up with surprise. Sure enough, have you been targeted? Then let Zhu Rong burn your filth. At the same time, when Beidou and his party left the house for a while, a figure was approaching quickly. It was a young red-haired man, covered in snow-white cloth with sin marks, and there was an excited grin on the corner of his mouth. In his deep black pupils, there is a killing frenzy. Here, there, just ahead. I can already smell you, mighty swordsman. The red-haired man sped up his speed while talking, completely oblivious to the scenery around him. In the blink of an eye, he had already stepped into the area of Tokyo Prefecture. The direction of progress is the Sensoji Temple in the middle. I hope this time, you make me happy. A big battle is coming. Sensoji Temple, located in Taito District, Tokyo, is a place of entertainment mainly in Edo style, and it is also the oldest temple in the area. The gate of the temple is named Fengali Shenman, and on both sides stand 2 majestic statues of Fengali to protect the law. One has raised eyebrows and eyes, and the other is majestic and evil, which are the symbols of Asakusa. It is said that more than 1,000 years ago, a pair of fishing brothers salvaged the Avalokitesvara statue in the Sumida River. They believed that the Avalokitesvara had manifested, so they called on people to build a temple here, which is also the origin of Sensoji Temple. But today, a few travelers who were traveling in horses stopped in front of the door. My lord, are you sure you want to rest here? 2 slender hands raised the cloak, revealing a fair face, with a hint of worry vaguely visible. This woman is Miss Tamayo. Behind her, Yushiro, who was still carrying the package, couldn't help looking forward. Facing Ms. Tamayo's question, the young man woven with a wisp of gray bayou nodded slightly. It's a long way, and there is no place to stay nearby, so that's all I can do. That's what he said, but in the young man's eyes, there was a hint of joking. Because, Beidou clearly sensed something strange. Regarding his words, even if Ms. Tamayo still hesitated, she had no choice but to let it go. Yushiro. After being called by her name, Yushiro stepped forward and knocked the heavy door knocker. Not long after, a crack appeared in the maroon door, and a round head protruded from it, which turned out to be a little monk. You are. Yushiro turned his head and found that Beidou and Tamayo were looking at him, so he could only bite the bullet and said, Master, I got lost in this mountain, can I stay overnight in your place? Unexpectedly, upon hearing this sentence, the little novice even burst out laughing. You don't need to be so polite, I'm still too young to be a master. At this moment, Yushiro blushed, wishing he could find a crack in the ground and sneak in. Fortunately, the little novice was considerate, and immediately helped him out. You wait, I will ask the abbot grandpa for advice. As he left quickly, Yushiro got better. At the same time, he was also complaining in his heart, who is it not good to call, but let me come. But after thinking about it, Yushiro sighed again. After all, he can't afford to offend the two people behind him. Grandpa Abbot, they are right outside the door. The gate was opened from the inside, and under the guidance of the little monk, a kind-faced white-browed old monk came. He nodded to the three of them, still spinning the rosary in his hand. May I ask where the three of you come from? Master, we are the people of Tokyo Prefecture, and we want to go south to find relatives. Hearing this gentle voice, the abbot nodded and found that it was a woman. I see. Master, may I stay overnight? The abbot glanced at the three of them. Yushiro and Miss Tamayo were okay, only the indifferent young man could not be seen clearly. It seemed that there was a layer of fog covering Beidou's figure. This made the abbot feel very strange, but it was difficult to say it directly. After some deliberation, the abbot finally nodded his head. Amitabha, since the three of you don't dislike the rudimentary nature of the small temple, the old monk will naturally give you a reason to refuse. Please. After all, the abbot made an invitation gesture, and the little novice also said in a dignified way, come with me. Thank you, master. Miss Tamayo clasped her hands reverently and bowed again and again. Under the gaze of the two gods at the door, the three entered Sensoji Temple and lived in different houses. After arranging Beidou and his party, the abbot also returned to the Guanyin Hall, sitting alone on the futon, reciting Buddhist scriptures. For some reason, when the abbot was concentrating on meditating, a gust of wind blew. Blow out 2 candles. The abbot's mind moved, and he was surprised. He had already closed the doors and windows, but where did the wind come from? Amitabha. After thinking about it, the abbot closed his eyes again, but the statue of Guanyin in the hall and the candlelight complement each other. On a street outside Sensoji Temple, Mukago, who had given up following Ms. Tamayo, also had a new destination. Taking advantage of the dark moon and high wind, she walked on the street alone, looking around from time to time. Just at this time, a sound came from an alley. Clang. This sudden sound startled Mukago, and quickly shrunk his neck. She swallowed deeply, followed the sound and found a person walking towards her. Clang, clang, it's dry, be careful with candles. Mukago didn't relax until he heard this sentence, apparently quite frightened. At the same time, she frowned again, with a murderous look in her eyes. I was actually frightened by a watchman. Thinking of this, she quickly bent down and walked towards the watchman. Immediately afterwards, a smear of blood splashed on the wall, and the oil in the watchman's lantern was also spilled all over the floor. Ah! After a full meal, Mukago showed a satisfied smile. Before she had time to wipe off the blood, she walked deep into the street, and finally stopped in front of a mansion that was no less than a palace. The first letter. The teaching of ultimate bliss for all ages. Stop. Before Mukago approached, 2 sticks stopped her immediately. They turned out to be 2 big men with strong backs and masks. Smelling their scent, Mukago's eyes turned red instantly, and he licked his chapped lips. People. The eyes of the 2 big men were startled, especially when they saw the blood all over their bodies. They shuddered instantly. Let her in. It wasn't until they heard the voices in the building that they woke up like a dream and gave way. Mukago smiled darkly and pushed open the door. She kept spinning around in the pavilion, and just when she was about to get confused, a familiar voice came into her ears. What are you doing here? Mukago raised his head subconsciously, and the sight. A lifeless face, white oak hair color, colorful pupils. He was dressed in a gorgeous cassock, but was casually draped on his body by the young man, without any sign of solemnity, and he was just lying on the chair. Even so, Mukago dared not make any mistakes. Because the person in front of you can decide your own life and death at any time. I have seen the leader. My lord, I came here with a piece of information to give you. Mukago pressed his forehead to the ground, and said cautiously, it's Miss Tamayo who is on the run. Oh, hearing this name, the young man frowned, but he was still playing with the things in his hands. I would like to ask you too. Not interested in. Unexpectedly, before Mukago finished speaking, the young man had already finished his conclusion. Suddenly, the whole room was filled with a chill, and several ice flowers wrapped Mukago's body. Big, my lord, only then did she realize that her own life was already in someone's hands. In the ear, there was also the indifferent voice of the young man. Next time, you'd better wash off the blood on your body, that smell makes me sick. Yes. With a clatter, something fell in front of Mukago, which was just the toy of the youth. A young woman's arm. But, walking on the street where you can't see your fingers, Mukago gritted his teeth, his eyes were blood red. Thinking of the scene of being ignored by that person in the mansion of the Bliss sect just now. She has a heartfelt humiliation, as well as outrageous anger. And in Mukago's hand, there was still a young woman's arm, which was the leftovers that the man threw to the ground just now. That action was like a dog begging for food. Apparently, Mukago was rejected, more precisely. It was the other party who completely ignored her request. It seemed that to that adult, she, the ghost of Shashion, was not as good as the bleeding arm in her arms. Even without you, I can kill them myself. Thinking of this, Mukago slowly opened the cloak, and the two sharp horns on his forehead looked even more ferocious. Not long after walking, Mukago stopped. The place where she resides is just outside the gate of Sensoji Temple. With the dim candlelight, Mukago vaguely saw something, as if a pair of eyes were watching him. Gradually, two calm and majestic faces appeared. They were the two 8-foot giants holding in their hands. This is. Mukago's whole body seemed to be passed by an electric current, and he shivered suddenly. She subconsciously wanted to run away, just like she did when she fought Zu in the past, but she stopped again in a flash. Because she discovered that it was not a god at all. It's the statue of the wind and thunder guarding the gate. Only then did Mukago let out a long sigh of relief, and wipe the cold sweat from his forehead. What are you doing? I thought. Soon, a sly look flashed in her eyes again. There was also an unusual intention in the gaze towards the statue of Fengali god. 2 dirt lumps, I will lend you 2 bodies. Come and play with them. Mukago licked her scarlet lips, and with a flash of her eyes, a faint mist of blood spread to the 2 statues. Suddenly, 2 pairs of eyes opened at the same time. The limbs of the statue also showed signs of loose soil. In the middle of the night, the monks of Sensoji Temple had stopped chanting and returned to their owners. Only the abbot was left, and he stayed in front of the Guanyin statue. Brother, I'm going to make it easy, and I'll be back in a while. Outside the lobby, a monk like a skinny monkey sneaked out of the room while everyone was not paying attention. He looked left and right, and after confirming that no one was following him, he walked to a corner of Sensoji Temple. Then, after fumbling around in the clothes, he finally found something. Gulu. Just taking a breath, the monk's throat moved, and his eyes showed hunger and thirst. The corner of the mouth is also drooling. Looking at what he was holding in his hand, it turned out to be half a chicken butt wrapped in oil paper. Thanks to my good eyesight, if someone saw this, it would have been swept into the fallen leaves long ago. It turned out that the half piece of chicken butt was thrown away by tourists who came to visit Sensoji Temple this morning, and he picked it up. Under normal circumstances, one cannot eat meat after converting to Buddhism. Otherwise, it will be regarded as breaking the precept and expelled from Sensoji Temple. However, a young novice like him, who has just been ordained, will inevitably be greedy for these fats and meats. Coupled with the fact that there are a lot of tourists here, there are often uneaten food, Tien is cheap for him. Gulu. Thinking of this, the little novice grinned and licked half a piece of chicken butt in a panic. There was an instant satisfaction on his face. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a joking voice came from behind him. Is it delicious? It's delicious, because it's delicious. He replied subconsciously, but unexpectedly, there was more to come. Why don't you give me a taste too? The little novice swallowed it whole, and suddenly opened his eyes wide. He seemed to have thought of something, and shivered suddenly. Turned around slowly. What is shocking is that the abbots and monks are not standing in front of the little novice. Instead, a tall and muscular figure stared at the little novice with a pair of bull eyes. Little Shami's head buzzed, the chicken butt in his hand. It fell to the ground and splashed a few oil flowers. Demon, monster, he yelled at the top of his voice, and then he planned to run away, but he ran into something after walking a few steps. There was a big bump on his forehead, and the little novice raised his head in a daze. It's still that giant guy. And he hit it is the chest of the giant man, which can be called indestructible. Afterwards, the little monk's eyes went black and he passed out completely. Seeing that he lost consciousness, a thin figure jumped from the back of one of the giants. He lifted his chin and smiled sinisterly. Let me taste. Which is more fragrant, your meat or the chicken's meat? Immediately afterwards, in the corner of Sensoji Temple, there was a scalp-numbing chewing sound. At the same time, the abbot who was sitting in front of the Guanyin statue also opened his eyes. He got up and opened the door, and there were several monks who were dressing. Where is the noise? Facing the questioning, the monks rubbed their sleepy eyes. Obviously they also rushed here after hearing the voice. Soon, one of the monks was surprised. Little gourd, the little gourd seems to be missing. Didn't he go to wake up at night? The voice just now seems to be Little Gourd. The Little Gourd in the population is the nickname of the novice monks. He has not been in Sensoji Temple for a long time, and he is thin and weak, so everyone still calls him by his nickname habitually. Hearing everyone's chatter, the abbot's face changed slightly, but he was spinning the rosary in his hand. In my mind, the faces of 2 men and 1 woman emerged. Could it be them? Amitabha, don't be anxious, go find where the sound comes from, and then make a decision. Yes, abbot. Before the words fell, the monks had already picked up their sticks. The hustle and bustle scattered towards Sensoji Temple. On the other side, someone from the side room also got up and walked into the courtyard. Look at that snow-white little face, and the ray of melancholy between the brows. It is Miss Tamayo. Master Tamayo, are you all right? The person standing at her door was Yushiro, who had heard the news, with a look of vigilance on his face. Unfortunately, Tamayo shook his head. Obviously the focus was not on him. Instead, it was placed in the opposite yard. There. It is the place where Beidou rests. Gradually, the entire Sensoji Temple was stained with a touch of depression, and the sounds of riots and fighting came to the ears. The movement seems to be getting bigger and bigger. Boom. Demon, there are monsters. Run, hurry up and protect the abbot. In less than a while, the entire Sensoji Temple was in chaos. The originally quiet and peaceful temple is also at this moment into a noisy and eerie atmosphere. Monsters, there are monsters. Run, he's coming, quick. Help, I don't want to die yet. The shouting continued, as if coming from all directions. The wandering monks ran around like headless chickens, but they couldn't find the source of the sound at all. The only thing they can do is back to back, waiting to meet your companions. It's a pity that under the dark night, the monks' actions alone gave the enemy a chance to harvest. Beside the well, a monk held a wooden stick and looked around in fear. In order to reduce his fear, he even recited Buddhist scriptures silently in his heart. However, after actually encountering the so-called monster, "Are you looking for me?" Hearing the voice from behind, the monk shivered suddenly and turned his head. What came into view was a pale face with 2 small pointed horns on its forehead, looking at the monk with a smile. It is worth mentioning that on the corner of her mouth, there were still bits of meat and blood left. Ji Lu, a bald donkey who only eats vegetables, is really hard to eat. It is the end of the string Mukago. Faced with Mukago's cold complaints, the monk didn't even dare to take a breath, only trembling instinct remained. However, the moment he meets Mukago, his life is no longer his own. Tell me, where is that woman? What? The monk was confused and didn't understand Mukago's words at all. In the next second, he felt a sharp pain in his neck, and his eyeballs popped out. His neck was torn off abruptly by Mukago. Waste time. Mukago curled his lips, and went into the darkness again, continuing to look for his prey. On the other side, several monks had already had direct contact with the monsters in their eyes. In the courtyard of Sensoji Temple, the monks held their magic sticks and looked at the people who passed by as if they were facing a big enemy. To be more precise, it is not a person. Instead, there were two huge black shadows with a height of 2 meters, looking down at them from a high position. Gulu. I don't know who made the sound, and it immediately attracted the attention of two shadows. Under the pale moonlight, the monks finally saw their appearance clearly. A man with horizontal brows and vertical eyes, tightly closed lips, wearing azure samurai armor, and holding a long cloth bag in his hand. A majestic, evil, dressed in a dark purple Taoist robe, with a string of thunderous taiko drums behind him. All of a sudden, all the monks were stunned. Aren't these the two gods of wind and thunder guarding the gate? How did they come back to life? Could it be that this is really a god descending from the earth? They never imagined that the two dirt lumps usually guarding the gate would actually have life. Even attacking himself with weapons and spells. How dare the monks believe this? They couldn't help thinking of retreating. It's okay if you meet some wild beasts or monsters, but standing in front of them. It's the real wind and thunder gods. Legend has it that Jianyu Lei Shen was born from the blood of the gods. He followed the orders of Amaterasu god Tyr and led the war to quell the conquest. Jianyu Fengshen, also known as Jianyu Mingfengshen, is the son of the lord god of the great country, and once wrestled with thunder god. As an integral part of the mythology of the island nation, the two have always been regarded as the existence of door gods, with the power of being upright and eliminating disasters. Now, seeing two gods walking towards him, no matter who he is, he will inevitably feel timid. Not to mention, it is these monks who have been instilled with the idea of gods and Buddhas since childhood. Their faith collapsed at this moment, and they really didn't know what to do. What should I do? Gradually, as the two gods of wind and thunder approached, the monks retreated outside the lobby of Sensoji Temple. Behind them is the statue of Guanyin, and they have no way out. Amitabha. Seeing this scene, the abbot who had been silent for a long time also walked out of the lobby, and couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He could never have imagined that the long-renowned Sensoji Temple, it will be destroyed in his own hands, especially being ridiculed by these two gatekeeper gods. Boom, boom. The wind and thunder gods are still walking forward, obviously they are not obsessed and vowed not to give up. Just when the crisis was about to break out, a figure silently walked out of the darkness. Are they, the so-called monsters? Hearing this lazy voice, everyone turned their heads and found that it was a young man. He was wearing a gray and white kimono, which was incompatible with the dirty and bloody ground, and his right hand was clasped on the hilt of the sword at his waist. Seeing the young man coming, the abbot couldn't help but frown, and opened his mouth even though he was sleepy. Benefactor, this time our temple has suffered such a catastrophe, I'm afraid it won't be able to accommodate you anymore. No problem. The young man smiled lightly, showing no sign of retreating. In his eyes, only the two huge statues of wind and thunder. Clang. A brisk clanging sound broke the silence of the night, and Zhu Rongjian was already in his hand. Benefactor, don't go any further. The abbot frowned, subconsciously raised his hand to stop him. However, looking at the two mud bumps with stiff movements, a look of disdain flashed in Beido's eyes. In the next second, he drew a sword at random. In an instant, a white light streaked across the darkness, almost illuminating the plaque hanging on the beam. The entire Sensoji Temple is also dazzling like daytime. Crack. It seems like something is broken. What happened? Heaven, it seems to be dawn. All the monks raised their hands subconsciously, trying to cover their faces. What they didn't see was that the dazzling white light flew away, directly cutting the chests of the two statues. Broken, annihilated, eroded by demon power and flames. Just one knife, the god in the eyes of the world. It was turned into mud like rotten. As the sword-bearer, Beido stood there from beginning to end, without moving a step. Good king. When everyone opened their eyes, the only thing that stayed in their field of vision was the desolate figure from the back. Is the idol gone? No, look at the ground. Looking in the direction pointed, there are two groups of burning flames on the floor outside the lobby. Looking at the abbot's expression again, there are already panic, shock, and incredible. At the same time, in the corner of Sensoji Temple, Neko also wiped the blood on her lips. So, is it hidden in that location? Her blood ghost technique is to temporarily turn objects into unconscious puppets, who can only do some simple actions. The two wind and thunder statues are her masterpieces. Now, sensing the shattering of the statue, Mukago also guessed that the target was in the lobby. Sadly, she doesn't know what she's about to face. What a terrifying existence. Abbot, are you all right? After a long time, most of the monks came to their senses and gathered around the abbot. Hearing their questions, the abbot frowned. His gaze never left Beto's body for a moment. Just now, when Beto killed the statue of Fengli with his sword, he suddenly thought of something. A few days ago, a piece of news came from Jingongfeng Temple in Wakayama County. That is Koya Mountain where the Shingen sect of ancient meaning is located. There is a young swordsman who slays demons and eliminates demons. Saved the monks on the mountain and the people down the mountain. According to the villagers, the young swordsman was also Yishi Weibai Yuji, holding a black gold sharp blade. The only difference is that beside the swordsman, followed by two young women. Could it really be him? Gradually, Beto's back coincided with that legend, and his image in the abbot's mind. It has become more inscrutable. Thinking of this, the abbot clasped his hands together and bowed respectfully. Old man Rusong, thank you benefactor for saving me. Seeing this scene, the monks came back to their senses and understood the intention of the abbot. After all, it was Beto who saved them in just now. The rest of the monks all paid homage to Beto, completely forgetting their fear of the wind and thunder gods. At this moment, in the eyes of everyone in Sensoji Temple, compared with gods and Buddhas, Beto is more worthy of their memory. However, Beto shook his head in the face of the devout prostration of the monks. Get out of here. The real enemy is coming soon. As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes widened. Could it be that the statue of the god of wind and thunder, which has caused countless murders, is not the culprit behind the scenes? Contrary to the shock of the monks, Abbot Rusong took the lead in raising the Zen stick in his hand, telling everyone to back off. After seeing Beto's performance, he has already made up his mind. This time, if there is no Beto's arrival, Sensoji Temple will be destroyed. With Beto's warning, the monks quickly retreated to the main hall of Sensoji Temple. As for those who are still outside, they are already powerless. On the other side, Ms. Tamayo and Yushiro also came after hearing the news. Master Beto, what happened? Tamayo glanced down and quickly noticed the burning idol on the ground. With her ingenuity, she immediately responded. Is it Kibutsuji Muzen's subordinate? Beto nodded slightly, didn't have time to explain to them, but waved his hand. Hey, outside the lobby of Sensoji Temple, there was a tingling laughter. Miss Tamayo, be careful. Seeing Beto's movements, Yushiro felt as if he was facing an enemy, and protected Ms. Tamayo behind him. Finally, in an atmosphere of silence, a woman with a pale complexion also stepped out of the shadows and came into everyone's sight. It was clearly the turn of summer and autumn, but the woman was wearing a thick cotton-padded jacket, with fluff wrapping her neck. What's even weirder is that on both sides of her head, they actually grew a sharp horn, which was flooded with blood red. Smelling the strong smell of blood, Miss Tamayo instinctively frowned. Master Beto, she is not an ordinary ghost. Guess right. The woman smiled sullenly, and walked over majestically. I am Mukago, the same too. The one who took you back, Tamayo. Hearing Mukago's words, Ms. Tamayo narrowed her eyes slightly. In the past, it was not that she did not encounter the pursuers sent by Muzen, and she and Yushiro used tricks to solve them. But it was the first time for a 12 Kazuki level ghost. As Mukago was walking, he suddenly noticed something and raised his head. Guys blocking the way, get out of the way. After eating so many people, my stomach can hardly hold it anymore. Looking in the direction of Mukago, she just talked to. It was Beto in front of the lobby. In the next second, 10 knives rested on Mukago's neck. What? The blade touched her skin, and soon, an unusually hot pain spread all over her body. In the dark, it seemed that there was a flame burning her soul. Ah, Mukago wanted to cry out in pain, but he didn't dare. It seems that as long as Beidou has one thought, she will leave this world completely. Shock and fear were written in Mukago's eyes. Obviously just a teenager, why? There will be such a powerful momentum. Where is he? Who are you talking about? Beidou narrowed his eyes slightly, and the blade moved down again. He can cut off Mukago's head whenever he wants. Immediately afterwards, Beidou said a name that made her face change suddenly. Your master, Kibutsuji Muzan. What? There was a buzzing in Mukago's mind, and he was jolted as if struck by lightning. Sweat soaked her cotton jacket. She never imagined that the young swordsman in front of her would actually ask such a question. Feeling the wound deepening, Neko almost cried out. She has been a ghost for so long, and she has always regarded people as food. Only when encountering a pillar would he flee in a hurry. It is also the cowardly character that makes Mukago the longest living ghost. Unexpectedly, today he ran into Beidou's knife. I don't know, I really don't know. My lord, please let me go. I was wrong, I knew I was wrong. While talking, Mukago clenched his fists, and a few tears came out of the corners of his eyes. No matter how idiot she is, she still knows that she has hit the iron plate. For the current plan, we can only take the initiative to be weak and wait for a chance to escape. However, Beidou seemed not satisfied with Mukago's answer and performance. Have you ever heard a story called Crocodile Tears? Mukago was stunned for a moment, and the next second, she suddenly felt light in her body. To be precise, the picture in front of me is out of control. In Mukago's field of vision, she actually saw the bloody cross-section of the neck. My head, my body, separated. With a bang, Mukago's head fell to the ground and rolled to Beidou's feet. Surprisingly, she didn't die right away. Soon, a foot stepped on her face, and a familiar voice came from her ear. One last time, where is he? Grunt. Mukago trembled, his eyes became more and more empty. She wanted to open her mouth, say that name, to avoid being chopped off by Beidou. But, thinking of what that name means and what terrifying power it symbolizes, Mukago suddenly gave up. No matter what, she dared not touch Lord Yongli's bad luck. Expose Kibutsuji Muzan's location. Master Beidou, I have a way to make her speak. Just at this critical moment, a melodious and beautiful voice sounded from behind. Beidou turned his head slowly, and it was Miss Tamayo walking. She still had the same frowning look, but when she saw Mukago's face, there was such a heartfelt disgust. Apparently, Miss Tamayo also hated Mukago's murder and the strong smell of blood. Seeing that, 077, pretty face, Beidou also remembered something. In the plot, it was Miss Tamayo who used her own blood ghost technique to let Zhu Sha reveal the real name of Muzan, the dance plan. As a result, the restriction setup was directly torn into pieces. Her blood ghost technique is called blood confusion, which uses her own ghost blood as a medium to create a hallucinogenic effect. Among them, the magic fragrance of the day can cause the subject who smells the smell to decline in brain function in a short period of time. As a result of this, it is impossible to keep secrets. Let her dictate. Master Beidou. With Beidou's approval, Ms. Tamayo stepped forward and stroked the jade arm with her fingernail. Suddenly, there was a bloody mouth. Gradually, the intoxicating breath passed into the nose. Mukago, who was still stubbornly resisting a second ago, suddenly became light, and his eyes became more lax. I ask, you answer. Yes. Beidou found that in great fear, the effect of vampirism seems to be better. The current Mukago has become a real puppet. Your master, are you in Tokyo Oyasa? Yes. How many people did he send in total to hunt and kill me? 3 of them, the other 2 are dead. For Ms. Tamayo's question, Mukago is completely knowledgeable and endless. Finally, when asked the last sentence, something unexpected happened. So, where is Kibutsuji Muzan hiding? After saying this, Ms. Tamayo couldn't help frowning, her forehead covered with sweat. The premise of using this blood ghost technique is to keep the smell of blood. In other words, Tamayo cannot heal his wounds until he gets a clear answer. In an instant, the entire Sensoji temple was dead silent. Beidou stared at Mukago, who also frowned. Obviously, this question touched some kind of prohibition, which gave Mukago a strong will to resist. No, no. As she spoke, she grabbed her throat with her hands. Never speak out, my lord, no. On the other hand, Ms. Tamayo's expression became more and more embarrassing, but she also guessed that this would happen. After all, with the character of Kibutsuji Muzan, no one will find any clues. My lord, he is. In the next second, I saw that Lu Shazi was going to tell the location. A powerful aura approached the periphery of Sensoji Temple. Wow, almost without hesitation, Beidou pushed Miss Tamayo away, indirectly interrupting her spellcasting. Miss Tamayo coughed twice, her red lips were bloodstained. She didn't understand why Beidou wanted to interrupt her. Wouldn't all previous efforts be wasted? Stand back. Before the words were finished, Beidou raised his arms suddenly, and the powerful wind blew Tamayo and Yushiro away. In an instant, a meteor fell from the sky. The flame scorched the air, and its target was the courtyard of Sensoji Temple. Boom! The moment the meteor fell, the terrifying air wave overturned several small trees, and the remains of the previous statue of the wind and thunder god. It also turned into a handful of loess. Such a terrifying and huge momentum, could it really be a meteorite? After searching for so long, I finally found you. The dust dissipates, under the night. A figure gradually emerged. It was a pale and terrifying face, short pink hair, a pair of dark blue pupils, and a sneering mouth. Looking at his whole body again, the dense marks of sin symbolize this person. What heinous crimes have been committed? And massacred countless lives. Obviously, it was his arrival that caused the weather change. The moment he saw the man clearly, Beidou couldn't help but move his eyes slightly, and grabbed Zhu Rong's sword hilt. Because, he knew the face. Unlike other people who are facing the enemy, Mukago has a smile on his face. Master Akaza, why are you here? That's right, this pink-haired young man is Akaza, the third of the strings. It is also the hunter who has been searching for Beidou since Chie Mountain. Now, he has achieved his purpose. Want a hearty battle? My lord, thank you for your life-saving grace. If it weren't for you, I might die. Mukago smiled happily, completely oblivious to the murderous intent in Akaza's eyes. Sure enough, in the next second, Akaza threw a hand knife casually. Crack! Mukago's head burst, and exploded into an incomparably bright blood flower. According to common sense, the weak points of ogres are only the sun and wisteria flower poison. Is the real sense of immortality. But there is another way to die, which is the festering and destruction of the cells in the whole body. Right now, Akaza's hand knife implied destructive power, directly messing with Mukago's ghost blood. Make her shut up completely. Till. In any case, Mukago never imagined that this Lord Winding Ghost is not a rescuer, but the person who wants his own life. Seeing this picture, both Ms. Tamayo and Yushiro were shocked, with panic on their faces. The existence that can easily kill Shashion Ghost in seconds. It can only be the Winding in 12 Kazuki. Doesn't it mean that the red-haired young man in front of him is? You came to see me. In the silence, Beidou narrowed his eyes slightly. He suddenly didn't care about Akaza's cold eyes. That's right, I hope you can let me taste the joy of fighting. Akaza smiled coldly, shook his two arms, and made a crackling sound of joint dislocation. He has waited too long for this battle. At this time, the system's notification sound came as scheduled. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully arriving at the sign-in location, and the sign-in officially begins. The sign-in time is 1 hour, and if you quit halfway, it will be considered a sign-in failure. Beidou held the Zhu Rong sword in his hand and smiled faintly. Sensoji Temple under the moon. It was cold and windy. Miss Tamayo, that person seems to be. Outside Sensoji Temple, Miss Tamayo and Yushiro hid in the shadows, concern written in their eyes. Looking at the center of the battlefield, the gusts of wind and the terrifying aura. How can the hearts of two people be at peace? Especially, Yushiro shivered instinctively the moment he saw Akaza appear. This is a trembling from the heart. There is no escape. The reason is simple, there is only one source of all ogres, and that is the Ghost King Kibutsuji Muzan. And according to the strength of the ghosts themselves, and the concentration of ghost blood in their bodies, there are 2 levels of 12 Kazuki and ordinary ghosts. Among them, 12 Kazuki is divided into upper string ghost and lower string ghost. The two seem to have the same spirit, but they are actually very different. A lower 16-string ghost like Mukago, in front of a swordsman at the column level, only to be killed in seconds. As for Shangxian Jilu at the end of Shangxian Ghost, the pillars are almost regarded as playthings, and I don't know how many have eaten them for hundreds of years. Not to mention Akaza, the pillar who died tragically in his hand. Totally countless. Therefore, the mere appearance of Akaza made Yushiro feel a kind of fear from the soul. This is the suppression of the aura of the superior. Sensing Yushiro trembling, Ms. Tamayo frowned slightly, not knowing what to do. It's from 12 Kazuki, the winding ghost. Ms. Tamayo paused, and revealed another fact that shocked Yushiro even more. Estimated, in the top 3. After finishing speaking, Yushiro's already pale complexion became worse again. Over the years, it's not like Tamayo hasn't probed into the secrets of winding ghosts. But after actually seeing her, she realized. In front of Akaza, there is almost no room for him to escape. For now, she can only pin all her hopes on Beidou, and hope that the Lord save your life. Similar to the reaction of the two, in the main hall of Sensoji Temple, all the monks are also facing an enemy. They trembled through the window and looked towards the courtyard. But he didn't have the courage to take a step out of the door. Because everyone knows, not to mention approaching the center of the battlefield, just standing on the periphery. There is a heart-piercing pain. As the abbot, Rusong's old hands were also turned into fists, and his cloudy eyes were full of eagerness. This battle will be the biggest battle in the history of Sensoji Temple. Biggest crisis ever. Amitabha. After being silent for a long time, Rusong spread out his hands, allowing beads of sweat to slip from his palms. He has always burned incense and worshipped Buddha, but he completely forgot about Buddha. Just, silently looking forward to it in my heart. If Beidou is really a god on Mount Koya, he can eradicate demons with his own power and save King Kongbong Temple. Perhaps, Sensoji Temple still has a glimmer of life. If not, it must be a disaster. Seeing the performance of the abbot, the monks also came to their senses, sat on the ground and closed their eyes. Gradually, they gathered Buddhist scriptures. For Beidou who is slaying demons and demons, they waved flags and drums to cheer. At this time, the huge courtyard of Sensoji Temple was already in a mess. Trees are uprooted and boulders are shattered out of thin air. Only the shadows of swords, lights and swords came into view, making people dazzled. And the person holding the sword is Beidou who is ashamed of Bai Yuji. On the other hand, there is the third Akaza who is grinning grinningly. After a few rounds, Akaza didn't take advantage of the slightest advantage, on the contrary, there were scratch marks on both fists. Of course, these little wounds mean to him. In the blink of an eye, it looks brand new. Beidou knew in his heart that this was not the real strength of the pig's nest. The reason why he chose to wrestle with himself was on the one hand to test, and on the other hand he wanted to delay time. Let's fully enjoy the fun of fighting. After all, it is extremely rare to see such a dragon and phoenix among human beings like Beidou. There were also in the past, but unfortunately they all failed. And the price of failure is to leave this world completely. Tell me your name. Akaza gritted his silver teeth, madness flickered in his empty eyes. Under his threatening gaze, Beidou narrowed his eyes slightly. Ghost killing squad, demon pillar. Beidou. Very good. Akaza grinned grinningly, his right leg trembled violently, and he even put on a posture of galloping and punching. Immediately afterwards, his hoarse and cold voice carried through the entire Sensoji Temple. The third part of the first string, Akaza, come on. Asking Beidou's name proves that Akaza has regarded him as an enemy and has given him the minimum respect. However, the average person does not want such respect. Because what behind this is that Akaza is going to use all his strength. Destruction kill hyphenation. 6 forms. Akaza's blood ghost technique is very special. It is neither magic like Doma and Tamayo, nor self-enhancing like Wakuraba and Najima. It's just combat skills. This is why he is called the ghost of fighting. Akaza has always admired the strong and hated the weak, and is constantly looking for stronger opponents in order to become stronger. That's why he killed deserters like Mukago with one punch. Rengoku Kyujiro, who fought hard in the Battle of Infinity Train, is regarded as a guest of honor. Now, Akaza has found the match he wanted. Of course I won't let it go. Mr. Beidou, let me see your swordsmanship attainments. Before the words fell, Akaza raised his right fist and launched an offensive. It is the sabotage and chaos style. Seeing this situation, Beidou also had a thought, turned into lightning and rushed out. As Akaza stood up, an unimaginable sense of oppression suddenly came to Sensoji Temple. The first to bear the brunt are those buildings that cannot be avoided. Bang bang, punch, kick. Akaza is like a ruthless hunter, shuttling back and forth in the palm-sized place of Sensoji Temple. And his target is Beidou, who is surrounded by layers of knife light. Little guy, why are you running? Could it be? Are you afraid? Akaza squinted his eyes slightly, looking at Beidou with interest. In his opinion, this swordsman can easily kill Sha Xiangui, and he already has the strength to catch his eyes. And on Chie Mountain, he unleashed the momentum created by Kang Lipo. It made Akaza happy to see Liaxin. So, after a simple test, Akaza hit hard. Boom. Destruction kill hyphenation point empty style. Seeing that Beidou had no desire to attack, Akaza didn't mind, and lit the fire of war by himself. His air style can track the target with the air wave created by his fist. In a certain sense, it is similar to tracking missiles. Finally, just as Akaza's punch was approaching, Beidou also sent out Zhu Rong. There are two reasons why he waited so long. One is to take a look at Akaza's current strength. After all, his understanding of the third of the three is only in the plot. The second is to gain momentum. Buzz. In the next second, under the hot pursuit of Akaza, who was not eager to try just now, suddenly disappeared. Seeing this unimaginable scene, Akaza stared slightly. In any case, he never imagined that mere human beings would have the ability to completely block the breath and even become invisible. This is exactly the ability that Beidou obtained by hunting down the triangular ghost in the northwest town. It's called stealth ambush. Wow! Just when Akaza was hesitating, a flash of light came into view. Akaza didn't have time to react, and a wound was torn out on his chest, which can be described as dripping with blood. Ah! He snorted, subconsciously wanting to retreat. Unexpectedly, this is just the beginning. Quote. In the silent Asakusa temple, there were strange footsteps. Akaza looked around like a headless chicken, but couldn't see Beidou's position at all. This is more than all the enemies he has encountered in the past. It's all trouble. Ding ding. Immediately afterwards, another flash of knife light passed by, causing Akaza to be covered with bloody mouths all over his body. Hateful. Akaza gritted his teeth, obviously angry. After being angry for a moment, he raised the corners of his mouth slightly again, showing a smile. Yes, such an enemy is what I want. Beidou, let me see how strong you are. In a blink of an eye, Akaza regained his footing and made a starting gesture. It is the core of his vampire art, destroying and killing Luo Zhen. After use, Akaza will perceive the opponent's vindictiveness like a compass, and make its own attack and evasion actions as precise as being attracted by a magnet. And the expression of release is the snowflake formation with 12 corners under his feet, which is called the unfolding of spells. The stronger the fighting spirit of the opponent, the more intense Luo Zhen's reaction will be. However, Akaza's vampirism also has weaknesses. That is, in the face of those enemies who have no grudge, or can conceal the grudge, the compass will be invalid. For example, through the world. Soon, under the guidance of the compass needle, Akaza's eyes suddenly brightened. Found you, little one. In the next second, he kicked his leg suddenly and threw himself at a wall of Sensoji Temple. Sure enough, a figure appeared vaguely. Destroy kill foot style crown first cut. Akaza grinned grinningly, raised his kick from bottom to top, and aimed at Beidou's head. Do a powerful kick. In his field of vision, Beidou had no room to dodge at all, only to be headshot by himself. Boom. After one blow, a big hole was opened in the wall of Sensoji Temple that had survived for 100 years. If the abbot and the monks saw this scene, they would definitely sigh. However, Akaza was not very satisfied. Because he missed it. At that moment just now, Akaza clearly confirmed that Beidou was standing in front of this wall. Why did it suddenly disappear? So much so that he kicked the wall. Did you just find out? It's too late. Soon, behind Akaza, that familiar voice came again. There were only 2 slaps, and a rope shining with white light tightly bound Akaza's waist. His hands were bound, and he couldn't move for a while. Akaza froze for a moment, and then realized that he had been cheated. The Beidou he saw. It turned out to be an afterimage created by the opponent. At the same time, Akaza was also horrified. He knows the principle of doing this, that is the embodiment of the speed reaching a certain level. In the blink of an eye, endless sword pressure approached. Akaza's proud body and well-trained physique trembled under the pressure of the sword. Immediately afterwards, a figure stepped out of the darkness in front of him. That stern face, as well as the scorching saber in his hand, is clearly the demon pillar, Beidou. At the same time, the monks of Sensoji Temple, including Miss Tamayo, all held their breath. They never imagined that the young man who seemed to be young. With every gesture, he easily controlled such a powerful enemy as Akaza. But can he really win? Miss Tamayo, the gentleman. Hearing Yushiru's voice, Tamayo was indifferent. She put her hands on her heart, feeling the accelerated heartbeat and rapid breathing. She has seen this scene before. That time was hundreds of years ago, on the body of the legendary swordsman, Breath of the Sun Jigyu Yueni. And the target of the encirclement and suppression is also an existence that is enough to make the world horrified. Kibutsuji Muzan. Do you think this will trap me? Akaza was still struggling, but was surprised to find that he couldn't break free from the light whip that bound him. These light whips are not ordinary Nuo's shackles. It is a technique formed by Beidou using strong demon power to condense it. Next, he will release the final blow. At the same moment, the system's prompt sounded in his mind, which seemed to announce Akaza's death sentence. +9, 8. As if he could hear the countdown, Akaza's eyes widened. He never thought that he would be damaged in such a place, and he would not end up being slaughtered. Who is this swordsman? 3. Gradually, the Zhu Rong sword in Beidou's hand exuded scorching heat and shone with infinite electric light. In the end, it turned into a silver-white giant dragon. Roaring, devouring Akaza. Ah, ding, congratulations to the host, son. Mission reward, natural teeth. The moment Beidou heard this voice, Beidou's eyes lit up. An incomparably bright light emerged from his eyes, and then left and right to the blade in his hand. That earth-shattering momentum gradually climbed. Like a sword of Damocles, hanging in the sky of Akaza. Akaza hadn't tasted anything like this since becoming an ogre in the past hundreds of years. As for his current performance, there is only one. That is genuine fear. No, more precisely, there is still excitement. What's the matter with this power? Akaza's eyes widened, filled with disbelief, as if he was looking at a monster. Beidou in front of him doesn't have any fancy sword skills. Just condensing the momentum has already convinced him. Beidou's performance made Akaza, who was dying, think of a person, an existence he hated and was jealous of the most. That is the chief of 12 Kazuki. The sequence is one of the winding. Black as dead. In the days when he first became a ghost, Akaza relied on his fighting spirit to constantly fight against the ghosts in front. In the end, it stopped at the level of Kokushibo. Can no longer move forward. Later, with the arrival of Doma, the icy rain eroded his mind, and Akaza also. And lost. Although, Akaza lost to Doma, but he was not convinced. In his mind, apart from Ghost Maisuji Muzan, he should not be provoked, and the strongest ghost is undoubtedly Kokushibo. After all, that is a martial arts wizard who is similar to him and has practiced hard for hundreds of years in pursuit of strength. And now, Akaza met such a person again. That is Demon Pillar Beidou. Could it be that this boy started practicing swords in the womb? It's just that what Akaza didn't expect was that when they met for the first time, Beidou would reward him with a death sentence. I don't accept it. I don't accept it. Impossible. Why? Akaza has lost his composure, trying to struggle against the shackles of light. It's a pity that Beidou didn't give him time to escape, but instead swung a simple and straightforward blow. This style is called Kanglongpo. In the next second, thunderous roars came, completely sweeping Sensoji Temple. Boom. Roar. The moment the roar broke out, everyone covered their ears, as if they were deaf and terrified. They, even after this move ended, did not hear the sound for a long time. At the same time, Ms. Tamayo and Yushiro also retreated to the side, barely holding on to the building to support their figures. As ghosts, this was the first time they had seen such a powerful swordsman. Especially when the other party is just a BGCE teenager. Under the influence of Kanglongpo, Sensoji Temple, which is obviously dark at night, seems like daytime. What is presented in the eyes of everyone is also a scene that will never be forgotten. Ah! From the center of the white light, Akaza's screams came one after another. I saw that giant dragon carrying the mighty force of the sky gradually engulfed his arms, legs and feet. Until it reaches the chest. From this point alone, it can be seen that Akaza's physical fitness cannot be ignored. It is difficult to defeat Kanglong, who has always been a one-hit kill, in a short period of time. End his existence. No. Finally, when the last white light disappears, Sensoji Temple regained its deathly tranquility, as if nothing had ever happened. However, under careful observation, there are almost all wrecks here, including the bones of monks and traces left by Mukago. I believe that after this incident, the Abbot Rusong will also hold a large-scale salvation meeting. Let these displaced souls enter reincarnation. After everything was over, Beidou didn't put Zhu Rong's sword back into its sheath. Instead, he quietly looked in front of him. The ground that could already be called a pothole. Is Akaza really dead? Come out, I know, you're alive. Beidou narrowed his eyes slightly, his eyes fixed on a corner. Under his powerful perception, the activities of all creatures are invisible, so Akaza, who wanted to escape in delusion, also revealed his whereabouts. Sure enough, as soon as Beidou opened his mouth, a bulging thing rolled out of the grass. That embarrassing appearance turned out to be a human head. With a pale face and short peach-red hair, it is none other than Akaza, the third of the series. However, where does he still have the glamorous face when he first arrived? It's just like a bereaved dog. In this way, he has already lost the qualification to face Beidou. Only the result of being beheaded. Why, where does your strength come from? This is not the highest realm. Akaza gritted his teeth fiercely, frowning tightly, with a serious expression. From his eyes, there was no fear, only one thing left. It is a deep question. He has always been looking for targets with fighting spirit, but in Beidou's body, he can hardly sense this source. The other party seems to be playing tricks on him deliberately, always at a certain moment. You can hide your breath. The reason is very simple. Beidou has already guessed Akaza's vampire technique, so he prescribes the right medicine. Fight it with magic power. Gradually, under Beidou's powerful pressure, Akaza's only remaining head was also deformed. Ms. Tamayo and Yushiro, who were standing on the other side watching the battle, froze suddenly. It was also at this moment that they finally understood. The young man in front of him has already surpassed Zhu, and even the Shangxian ghost in February can kill one or two. If they know that Akaza is the third of the first string. I don't know, how would I feel? Want to know? Hearing Akaza's cry of pain, Beidou smiled faintly. In his eyes, there is no insult and disdain, only one thing. That is pathetic. Feeling Beidou's pitiful gaze, Akaza, who was still suspicious, suddenly became angry. You bloody fool. Don't look at me like that. That's right, Akaza, who prides himself on being a strong man, has never been underestimated like this. Even when facing Kokushibo, the other party respected the enemy and went all out with him. On the contrary, Beidou, looking down on his existence with the posture of a superior. This made Akaza feel extremely ashamed and even angry. Why do you have to sympathize with me? I don't need sympathy. Pound. Akaza, who is desperate, still wants to attack, but unfortunately he only has one head left. Little did they know, just when Akaza was gnashing his teeth and was about to pounce on Beidou, a mysterious voice cut into the battlefield. Clank. That strange clanging sound seemed to be some kind of musical instrument. I just don't know who is hiding where to play. The next moment, a strange halo suddenly appeared in midair, directly covering Akaza's head. Clank. Ah! When the clanging sound disappeared, Akaza had disappeared. But seeing this scene, Beidou had a smile on his lips. Kibutsuji Muzan finally noticed. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.